vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll know your car's value in no time. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
Babina Noko returns to the battlefield with a great strategy to display a melody of victory. But the citizens are shaking their heads. Eric Tinkler's boys are confident that they will land successfully in the last four. This is the MTN8 quarterfinal. Wafa Wafa. Catch Sekhukhune United FC and Cape Town City FC on Saturday, 10 August at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, welcome to the show on this Women's Day in South Africa, and I reflect from August 9, 1956 to where we are now on August 9, 2024, right? My name's Ashraf Garda. This is the National Pulse. Public holiday, no public holiday. The issues remain. They are pressing issues that impact upon all our lives, and we will certainly talk about that right away. And as always, you can engage on some of the biggest issues because you have this responsibility of driving, in this case, the pulse of the nation. So to call in 086 000 2032, to WhatsApp us, you can do that, voice notes or text 0614 104 107. And if you are on social media, well, give us a shout out. We'll give you a shout out on Facebook, on Twitter, and anywhere else as well, even on your Instagram stories as well. So much of today revolves around what happened in 1956, and I just wanted to put this out to you. Do you, when you reflect on the women in the country at that time, do you then say Happy Women's Day now? Is it a sense of happiness or a sense of mission? I must tell you, I tend to always reflect on Women's Day, and I don't know what the right word to wish people well, because I think it's less about wishing them well and therefore saying Happy Women's Day, as you would say Happy Birthday, but certainly more about reflecting on all those women led by 5 significant women, but at the same time also reflecting on the others who joined them on the march, many of them, and since then, the many others who strive now for the type of, for the human rights issues that the women at the time strived for, and who continue to strive for some of the most pressing issues in the country that are missing in terms of ensuring that women in particular are able to assert themselves in South African society. So, that's just my point for now. And I wonder what you think about how we then manage the whole Women's Day process. But here's a thought for you to consider right away, right? When we do that, do we consider what is the status of South African women today and measure them up against, 5, 6, 10 indices and see where we are doing really well as a country or where we fall considerably short? Because otherwise, you can have a Women's Day every year. You have to ask yourself, and we do, what ultimately is the purpose of Women's Day? Is it to draw attention, to celebrate, or to use it as a galvanizing force so that we are in a position that the women we talk about as part of the South African National Collective are equal in society and take up the leadership positions that we all know is so critically important, but also that this discrepancy between what males have and what females have is neutralized completely. If it doesn't, how long then do we continue having Women's Day? Well, that's my point, so what's yours?
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Okay, so there we are. Let's get your thoughts on that issue. I wonder whether you would agree with any of the sentiments I've just expressed, right? 086 000 2032. Otherwise, to call in 0614 104 107, WhatsApp, text, or voice notes. And I'm sure you have your opinions on that as well. Right, let's get to the issue that was touched on yesterday, and that is the issue of the former PA of Ace Magashule now arriving in South Africa and in custody in this country. His former personal assistant, Morwadi Cholota, her flight landed at OR Tambo last night. Remember, we spoke about it, and there was this big crowd there. This comes after South Africa's bid to extradite her from the United States was successful. So we spoke to the SABC news reporter Kayelitle Kumalo James yesterday, but let's moving forward now. That alone was a big issue. So the process was lengthy, and we're trying to find out exactly what was the backstory to all of that between the Hawks and the NPA as well as Interpol. Who did what? Let's find out with Hawks spokesperson Colonel Pilani Inkwalazi on the line. Thank you for joining us, Colonel. Much appreciate your time here on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for having us, and good afternoon to you and your viewers.
Thank you. So we thought, let's find out from you, not so much the legal case, but the backstory in terms of how did we get to a position where a person has been extradited and therefore is in our country when there's been many other cases and those people, individuals who may have committed some crime in South Africa, living abroad, have not been extradited, therefore they're not here to face their day in court. So give us the backstory in terms of what was the process and what happened.
All right. No, great. Thank you. That's a very great question. Perhaps clarity needs to be given on these kind of issues. But cases, as you would know, that cases are not the same, and the circumstances surrounding a particular case are not also necessarily the same. But in this instance, as you would know, that the majority of the suspects were already arrested, and the matter is ready for trial. And in as much as they are released they are released on bail, there's a total of about 18 suspects already. That includes 5 juristic persons, that is the company or entities. So there's a lot of ground that has been laid on this particular matter, and as you would know, this particular suspect, which I am unable to call the name, to say the name until she has appeared in court on Monday, the suspect had initially was going to be a witness, but things did not happen as planned, and she was added as a suspect on the matter. And as a result, the case was argued on that side in the U.S., and the authorities that side then surrendered her to Interpol, that does the processes of extradition. And of course, before that was done, there was a lot of work that had been done by the DPCI together with the NPA. As you would know, the cases that are being investigated by the Hawks are cases that are prosecution-led investigation. So a lot has been done, paperwork was done, and then that led to the lady being surrendered to Interpol. And of course, upon arrival last night, the lady was then handed over to the DPCI, and that's when she was then arrested by the investigating officers of the DPCI and charged, and now is ready to face her case in Bloemfontein. She will appear in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court, and the case will progress for a bail application, and thereafter the case will be postponed, and she will be added to the rest of the suspects that actually will be facing trial between April and June.
Okay, and I take it the nature of the fact that she's been, charged already. She's arrived in custody, right? So she is in custody now.
As we speak, she is in custody. She is in police custody, and she will appear in court on Monday. That is in Bloemfontein. Yeah.
What can you tell us about? You made the point that initially she was going to be a witness, and then things changed, and therefore she's now being charged as an accused. I mean, what can you tell us about what happened there?
Well, Without going into the merits of the case, what I can say on this is that at any given time, the suspects that are charged, they can always go back to entering into a plea bargain where there is an agreement on the sentence and that kind of thing. So this is really not something that is not usual. These things happen, but at any given time, any of the 18 suspects that we have could decide to no longer pursue the case and maybe enter into a plea sentence agreement. But of course, that will be facilitated by the NPA. Ours is to ensure that we investigate and we put the matter to the NPA, and they will decide on the prosecution.
I understand.
And it's no different.
Okay. Just one thing regarding, extradition treaties, and I made the point in the intro, there have been others, particularly, and I'm not going to go into a full discussion with you about it, but certainly the issue of, for example, the Guptas, as you're well aware of, and many other accused. And then we hear about these things going on in other countries forever, and then we hear about extradition treaties, no extradition treaties. This one got involved, that one didn't.
Yeah.
What was the treaty relationship this time round that allowed her to be able to effectively be arrested in the USA and brought to South Africa?
The Interpol. Basically, it depends if the countries are member countries within the Interpol. And fortunately for us, SAPS is one of the member countries, and hence our members they went that side and had to receive the suspect. So there are binding laws in that regard, and fortunately both countries were able to enter into such discussions and release the suspect. And it's not an odd matter. It has happened before in a number of cases, in some instances even from South Africa, where people have to be surrendered to that side in the US. So this is just a normal investigation. Getting to that one, you would know that the NPA have actually released a statement on that matter that which was struck off the court roll, that they will be bringing it back, and I think given the time, there will also be a time where we are talking about that particular case in the manner that we are talking on this one. But of course, I do not want to get involved on those issues, but I'm just saying in passing, seeing that you've raised those issues, when that time is ready, and I'm sure those parties that are involved in that particular matter would have to go through the similar steps that we have gone through on this particular one. Yeah.
Just the last two things before I let you go. What about the security aspect on the entire journey? It's a long journey. I mean, what plans get put in place? Obviously, she's effectively under lock and key in that case, right? Never mind on a very public flight. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this question, because there has been quite a lot of issues we've had to deal with in the process, and even other people saying, there is a lady who's being arrested. There's so much police presence at the airport, and it may have been perceived as dramatic to other people, but to us, it's all about security. You would know, in the very same matter of the asbestos, there was one person who had already been killed. And of course, our police members who had already fetched the lady articles before she even landed, there was a picture of the lady also compromising the safety of our members that were actually escorting her to the country. So, and also at the airport, you do not know whether there will be groups of people awaiting or demonstrating or not. But as the police, we needed to ensure that she gets to the country safe, because anything that would have happened to her, she would have been in our hands. Yeah. We needed to ensure that there's police presence, and that handing over is done seamlessly. And when she's transported from the airport to Bloemfontein, that happens without any risk for our members as well as for herself as the
And I take it you've done just that. So thank you for sharing that information. We've got about a minute remaining. So quick one. I understand there's this military camp that's been discovered or uncovered in Limpopo. What can you tell us about that in the minute we have remaining?
All right. Yeah. Yes, I am very much aware on that one. That matter is under investigation, and we have released a statement. And my colleague in that province would definitely be available for any interviews. But of course, that matter is under investigation, and at this stage, the firearms were also taken in that incident. But my colleague can assist you with further details should you so desire.
Okay, so you can't tell us much more because obviously we're comparing what had happened regarding the Libyan nationals in White River, right?
Yeah, yes, no, I understand. What we are trying to avoid is to have too many voices speaking on one issue.
Okay.
But he would be a warrant officer. Murwa would be ready.
All right,
to be
let's leave it at that. Thank you for your time. What I'll do is we'll try and get hold of your colleague ASAP, maybe even on the show right now. It is the National Pulse after all. Thank you.
SAFM is celebrating its 88th birthday, and what better way to celebrate than with you, our loyal listener. We will be giving away 8,800 to 10 lucky listeners during the month of August. To stand a chance of winning, stay tuned to SAFM and SMS the keyword SAFM88 followed by your name to 41391 and listen to the station throughout the day where you could be selected as a winner. SMSs are charged at R1.50 per SMS. Free SMSs and SMS bundles do not apply. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Would you like to add your thoughts on that conversation I just had with Colonel Pilani in Kwalazi? I'm sure you have an opinion. Well, get it off your chest. Let me know what you think about that. Also, in the context of my opening thoughts, that's my point on Women's Day. What are your thoughts about what can be extracted from what happened in 1956 moving forward? Let's now move on to other issues as part of our daily global watch. And let's talk about transforming human waste into energy. So Chaiwe Sandese is Chaiwe Sandese transforms, and that's a title, transforms human waste into energy and fertilizer by treating it at high temperatures, which remove pathogens, making it safe to use. Now, the briquettes produced are used as an alternative to charcoal in Zambia. So with me, we have Chaiwe Sandese, the CADAV Capacity Development CEO. That's like the full title. Appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be joining this conversation.
Thank you.
This afternoon.
Thank you so much. So, I think this is important because we're looking at new ways of, renewable energy in all sorts, right? What is this about, where we talk about human waste being transformed into energy? Tell me about it.
Great. I'm happy to share. So, I've been an environmental expert for a very long time, for over a decade. And I've worked in the water and sanitation sector, but also have worked in the environmental sector more broadly. And one of the things that I've observed in the years that I've worked in the sector is human waste and other form of biomass waste that includes fallen trees, agricultural waste, waste food or whatever else is normally not used. It's basically discarded with the belief that it is just going to decompose and get back into the soil. But as populations grow, we see more and more that these sort of wastes become a hazard to human health. And that is very notable in the situation of most of our African countries, including Zambia, where I'm from. A lot of the fecal sludge, which is the human waste that is generated in informal settlements as well as formal settlements, ends up, believe it or not, after treatment, in most cases, ends up in landfills. And those landfills are commingled with other type of waste, like plastic waste or other types of hazardous waste. And this becomes problematic because when it ends up in these landfills, when it rains, the likelihood of that wastewater ending up close to your homes is very high, especially with increased urbanization. So we set out as CADEV to do something about it. And we realized the value of this hazardous waste because it is toxic. But when we treat it at very high temperatures, We kill a lot of these pathogens, and we then create this raw material called biochar that we then add more value to, and it becomes charcoal. Yeah, the traditional charcoal that we all know that is good for our braais and barbecues.
Okay, well, that's fascinating because often we talk about waste, which is not human waste. We talk about waste from, from animals and other things, and it's very rare that we have this type of conversation, right? So this is significant.
It is significant, and you're quite right. A lot of the world today does not talk about waste much, but we are in the brink of a climate crisis globally. We know that the temperatures are rising, and we have to start treating waste differently. And I mean, it's a vicious cycle. We generate waste, we forget about it. It may be plastic waste or any other type of waste, but all-rounded conversations need to center around circularity. And by circularity, it means when we generate waste, we need to think about how to reuse it. It becomes a cycle. We consume, we generate waste, we use it, and it becomes a cycle. And that's the only way that we can save our ecosystem. That's the only way that we can save the earth.
How much of a game changer is this, not just in Zambia, where you come from, but, for the entire world?
Oh, it's huge. This is huge. The conversations around biochar and waste to energy are becoming a significant conversation. We are looking at all types of biomass because if we look at Zambia, South Africa, across the world, we're seeing a lot of fires that happen. Some of them are human-induced, others are not. And that burning that happens is really burning of waste, be it forest waste, agriculture waste, you name it. We just burn, and we do too much of that. So ideally, what we are doing as CADIV is we're collecting that waste and processing it into these energy briquettes. And that allows for us to stop or ultimately reduce the practice of people cutting down trees for charcoal. This is a huge economic livelihood for a lot of people because this waste can simply be done sold rather as a raw material, or individuals can actually produce it into something more valuable in their own homes. It's not rocket science. It can be done by anyone, anywhere. That said, it's beyond just these charcoal briquettes that I mentioned. We're also able to generate waste into electricity. So when you use the right tools and the right technologies, that waste, fecal sludge, bio waste, agricultural waste, can actually generate you electricity. So we're on the brink of something tremendous here.
I suppose that's really that important part. At what stage does scientific research, then proven research, then convert into something that can be a commercially viable, that truly changes the lives of all peoples of the world? I mean, where are you at with it now?
Great. We are selling the product, so it is economically viable. A lot of Zambians, at least now that we have a lot of load shedding, I think that's a term that's very popular in South Africa as well. We have up to 12 hours of no power. So we're seeing people want the product. They want energy. They want to use their braziers to cook. So every other day we get a lot of calls asking us for our products. And so this is really bringing us a real income, and we see the potential for growth in the country, but also globally for this kind of alternative livelihood, for sure.
And I suppose, in the last, as a passing shot, this point to you that, yours is just an example again of understanding that within what we call waste and what is discarded normally, through innovation now can become used and an asset to society and civilization in a way we never thought possible before, isn't it? So how then do we get people around, in South Africa, around the world, in Zambia, around the continent too, switched on to understanding that what seems like complete junk, in fact, may not be that at all?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love that question, and I get that asked that a lot. I think that's one of our obligations, or one of our ambitions, is to get the capacity developed. Like I mentioned earlier, when I started, I am an expert. I've been doing this for over 10 years now, and it took a lot of knowledge to get to where I am. And so we need to build capacities. We need to train people. We need to raise awareness. It's really about people knowing what they're capable to do with waste. With that, knowing is only when and only when they can start to use alternatives and use it as an alternative to something more valuable. So yes, we need to do trainings. We need to raise awareness.
Well, you've certainly set the benchmark, and may others emulate and surpass, and that means just a better world that we all live in. So, Chaiwer Sandesi, I appreciate your time for KDEV, Capacity Development CEO. Thank you for those really important insights, and I really much appreciate it. We'll have that up as a podcast as well. In fact, ASAP, it's also visually available, some of it, certainly in the conversation we've just had. So you can follow us not just by listening on radio, but by streaming live. If you want to watch the show visually, just tune in now. Streaming live, safm.co.za, get to the website, or follow us on the X Twitter platform, and the same on Facebook. You'll see us if you like. But also, you can listen on streaming live around the world, wherever you may be on this National Women's Day in South Africa. Sport comes up next.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
To me, I last saw you on the golf course, and that is before somebody broke won the 200-meter gold. That's a long time ago, yeah.
We'll talk about him just a bit later, but let's start things off with football. A very good afternoon to you. Now, despite all the talks leading to this weekend's opening game of the season for Sekhukhune, the newly appointed head coach, Peter Hibala, remains in charge of the team, but Hibala will not sit on the bench this weekend as he's still awaiting his work permit. It's been widely reported that Hibala is on his way out even before he even coaches his first game in the MTN 8 against Cape Town City at the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane. According to SABC Sport, they understand that there are some internal and personal issues around Hibala and the players, but he sounds happy with his new environment.
Yeah, I get always the question how I adapt to South African style. I go my way. So I'm not really adapting because the players are here. The players play football with left and right foot. It's the same like in Germany or in Europe. Some points are a little bit different, but I like to work with the staff. The staff helped me a lot, and I really like my players. I must really say this. The first 5 weeks, they did everything. We train a lot. The most times we train twice a day. We was really 4 or 5 hours on the pitch. We did video training. We did everyday video sessions. And how I adapt to South Africa, maybe more sun cream for my skin.
So basically the story has been that there seems to be some sort of divisions between some of the players and Hibala, but it's also established that it's more of a situation of adaptation between the parties to each other's ways of doing things. So it's all about culture shock. Then moving on to athletics, South Africa qualified for the 4x400 meter men's final. This is after Nigeria were disqualified for a lane violation. Nigeria had finished heat 2 with the season's best of 2 minutes 59.81 seconds, while South Africa was last. However, unfortunately, according to the judges, they saw that the Nigerian runners crossed lanes, and that led to tripping a South African runner, and therefore they were disqualified. Then moving on to Tebogo, Botswana President Dr. Masisi has actually declared today an afternoon day off for Botswana in celebration of Olympic gold medalist Tebogo Letsile. The 21-year-old defied the odds by becoming the first Botswana and African to win the men's 200-meter title. And despite this monumental achievement, Letsile says it's just another medal.
It's not a big deal to me because we all know what Mwalazi is capable of. So I wouldn't say it's a dream come true for me. To me, it means a lot to African continent. It means a lot to everybody who was rallying behind me. And for the team that was behind me when we heard about my mom's passing, I was grateful for them because personally, I thought my career was over. But the team, they made sure I take each and every day how it comes and make sure that we come here only with a healthier body and a healthier mind.
I was also listening to his press conference after the race yesterday, and basically they asked him what makes Botswana special, and this clip was also played on Kathy's show this morning, but I feel like it's worth being replayed again. And here he is just explaining what makes Botswana special when it comes to athletics.
What makes Botswana special? It's the coaches, those who are dedicated of doing their work and being passionate about what they want to do. So they will help you go through every step of the way until you make it. Like how we didn't have any 400-meter hurdles ever, but the coaches made sure that we have at least one in the Olympics, and then hopefully for the coming years we'll see more and more of other athletes, not just 100, 200, 400 meters, and we'll also see the women's coming back, because there's been that drought, and now they just getting better and better each and every day.
So a big congratulations to Teboho, Ashraf. And I mean, if you've watched the documentary Sprint, I kept on saying, actually, you can even see on my Twitter, this guy called Teboho, there's something special about him. As much as the documentary was focusing on the likes of Noah Lyles, you could see that something is definitely going to happen. And here it has happened for him.
And he didn't just win. I mean, it was a convincing winner.
It was a very convincing winner. And for him, it looked like it was easy. And even in the press conference, they asked him, do you think you're the face of athletics? And his answer was like, no, I'm not as arrogant and as out there like Noah Lyles.
I saw that.
So Noah Lyles is the face of athletics.
But you know what's the good thing about that? He knows his place. He knows what and there are some great sportsmen around the world. Not every sportsman is, complete extrovert who wants to make a big noise. Some of the greats are not in all sorts of sports. So the good thing is he knows what he is. He's not going to suggest I'm going to become somebody else, right? He knows what he wants.
Absolutely.
It's fantastic.
21 years of age. The future is bright.
So they get half a day off.
Yeah.
For winning the 200 meters.
For winning the 200 meter. And the president...
And if he took part in the 100 meters, what would they get? A quarter day off or something?
Yeah, but I know
I think where there's a quarter day, because he just ran.
I do know that he's part of the 4x4 100 meter relay.
Then they'll get 4 days off.
Probably. Man, congratulations to him. But let's move on to cricket. Sri Lanka have raised security concerns with the England and Wales Cricket Board amid the ongoing anti-immigrant riots in Britain, with players requesting increased security ahead of the upcoming Test series against England. Sri Lankan players already in England for training before the 3-match Test series have asked their cricket board for better arrangements, as they do not have a security plan before the entire Test squad reaches London on Sunday. Sri Lanka team manager Mahinda said that he raised the security issues with the ECB after reading reports of unrest in Manchester, where the first Test is scheduled. Well, that's it. It's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
So, you know what? Just to end on this one, and it's very topical because of what's been going on in South Africa regarding Miss South Africa and all that sort of thing. When we've had Teboho winning, right, on 2 family groups I'm involved in and 2 other WhatsApp groups around, Champion South Africa, but many other things I'm involved in.
Yeah.
The conversation was widespread, and nobody from there is from Botswana. And everybody just embraced that's our guy, which I think is something we must appreciate, that we have a connection with the African continent.
Absolutely.
So no matter what, we want them to do well no matter what. And in his case, being Botswana, it's like it's home.
It's
really.
like our
it's
sibling.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there was universal spreading of good news on our family groups in the same way that we would have had when Sabina won, or rather, it came very close, and we had those gold medals in the pool as well, as we know, right? Same thing.
Funny enough, as my husband was dropping me off this afternoon, he showed me a tweet of someone saying, can he just please land at OR Tambo, we'll Uber him to Botswana.
Well, there we are. Maybe it will just happen. You never know. But he may say, I'll come to Botswana first, and maybe I'll see you guys in a 6 months' time when when South Africa is a day off for me. You never know. Maybe there's another public holiday for him, because we are cousins after all. Right, by the way, I'd like you to get your thoughts on some of the issues that you may want to raise. Here's one. Today, women are faced with hunger, violence, child neglect, drugs, alcoholism, and lack of respect. The Free State dairy scandal must be brought back as soon as possible. The justice system mustn't play games. From Madora. But I hear you, but we're not answering the overall question, which is, what are the biggest issues facing women in South Africa today, meaning when measured against a wish list of excellence across the board, how do they measure up?
The Miss South Africa 2024 finale will be live on Saturday, the 10th of August at 6 p.m. from the Sunbet Arena, Times Square, Menlyn, Maine. Good evening, Mzansi! Get your tickets for this crowning moment by going to misssa.co.za, downloading the official Miss SA app, or purchasing your tickets on ticketpro.co.za. Come and witness it live. SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024, celebrates Team SA medalists.
The Olympic medalist, Tatiana Smith, representing South Africa.
Tears of joy will certainly flow for Tatiana Smith.
Smith, silver.
I think this one is much different than any of my races. I'm so fortunate to get a medal.
For the love of the game.
SA Women's Struggles Journal. Celebrating 30 years of democracy towards women's development. On this Women's Day, SAFM celebrates the incredible strength, wisdom, and achievements of women everywhere. To all the amazing women, thank you for your endless contributions and inspiration. Happy Women's Day. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
So, Russia's military has said it is continuing to repel a Ukrainian cross-border incursion into the western Kursk region. A surprise attack now in its fourth day. Reports suggest that the Ukrainian troops are operating more than 10 kilometers inside of Russia, the deepest cross-border advance by Kiev since Moscow launched the full-scale invasion in February of 2022. Russia has declared a state of emergency in the region. The Ukraine has not directly referred to the situation in the Kursk region, but President Zelensky says that Moscow must feel the consequences for its invasion of Ukraine. The BBC's James Waterhouse sent this latest report from Kiev.
It's quite the day already. I mean, let's start with Konstantinivka, where we're seeing some pretty troubling images of a supermarket on fire. Now, what we're being told is that it's been directly hit by a Russian missile. Now, this is a city which is a sort of along a string of settlements in the eastern Donetsk region where Russian forces are continuing to push. And this is a kind of place where people get used to daily airstrikes and the residual threat of approaching invading troops. It's a very difficult existence for people there already. It reminds me of when a DIY store was targeted in the northeastern city of Kharkiv back in May when the Russians launched a cross-border incursion around there. We're talking about civilians going about their day-to-day, really. And so, yeah, the images are certainly, it doesn't look good for Konstantinivka, but sadly this is part and parcel of daily life in the east of Ukraine.
Well, let's see what happens there, because, is this sort of this counter response, that the type of responses that are just bound to escalate an ongoing battle and ongoing war in that region? It's certainly an issue that we're going to follow. Would you like to add your thoughts on what's happening between Russia and the Ukraine and what happens next? And maybe here's another things like, how long does it take to stop a war? When we used to read about wars in the history books, and you think about wars that goes on for 5 years and 10 years and even longer, and you wonder, but that's in another world, another time. Today, it's a modern era, modern technology. The level of communication is quick. You pick up a phone, you dial in on a Zoom chat, you WhatsApp even the leader if you really want to. How is it that it can be that long that we can't resolve the issue? I'm not talking about the complexities. I'm just talking about the telecommunications aspect that has shrunken the world. You would think that decision-making should be much quicker, much, much more effective. And yet, the issues of the war still goes on, right? Okay, let's move on to other issues. It's Women's Day today. I want to raise an issue just now about the 5 women that are featured in most of the pictures around Women's Day in South Africa in 1956. Not quite now, we'll do it just now, but every year, because it being a public holiday, and in this case being Women's Day, the president has to deliver the official Women's Day speech, and he certainly has done that. But let's pick up certain aspects from that. One of them is the issues of people with disability. Now, the Deputy Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities is Steve Letsike. And Steve says that it's unacceptable that decades later, since women marched against oppression, there are still women in this country facing abuse and other social problems. Now, the Deputy Minister was speaking on the sidelines of the National Women's Day commemoration that took place at the Dennis Nell Stadium in Pofadder in the Northern Cape. Well, on the line now we have the Deputy Minister in the Presidency, Steve, to get the full title, Deputy Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. That's Deputy Minister Steve Letsike. Good chatting to you once again, Steve. Thanks for joining us live on the National Pulse.
So much, Ashraf. Good afternoon to you and the listeners of SAFM.
Thank you. It's so interesting you raise these issues. That's why we must talk, because one of the things I've said at the opening, right, of the show is the incredible bravery of the women of 1956, right, must serve a certain purpose. And besides simply celebrating Women's Day as in having fun, I would think it's an important signpost in terms of where women, across a range of indices, that they need to be at the top of the game. And perhaps the issues, therefore, that you raise about like ongoing issues of oppression warrants us talking to you. So what then are your thoughts?
Ashraf, it's been 68 years since women marched in 1956 here in South Africa, seeking equality, recognition, but also most importantly, that women contribute to the economic emancipation. Now, when you look at the period it has taken us to get where we are, but most importantly, what has happened in the last 30 years since democracy hit South Africa. And I think we have progress that we've seen, from policy to programs, initiatives, but also to be putting a chair for the woman to really lead the emancipation of women and empowerment. But I think also we have quite a lot of issues, and you have stipulated these issues now to say we are not where we are supposed to be. We have to do better as South Africans. And once we actually ensure that women have sufficient, adequate support, we actually can see growth. There is no economic growth without women. There is no change without women playing an active, meaningful role for that.
So if I then just reflect on this, and it's difficult to have a full-on academic debate for 2 hours on a talk radio station, but if we say the benchmark for women, women's economic emancipation overall would be 10 out of 10 to be absolutely outstanding distinction, where then do we fit? I mean, what number would you give it?
Look, I think we are still at about 7, because there is much more we can do, and we can do better and fast. I think we are still seeing quite a lot of, women at the receiving of low job, gender pay gap that exists. We need to match it. So I would say we are not as 10, we are at around 7.
So the question is why? Like, what has happened that a country so strong on democratic values, so strong on the issues of women's rights and the rights of people with disabilities and so on, can still fall so short of its own high, lofty ideals?
I think we need to enforce a number of things. Our own policies are on the right spot. But, socially, we don't move as fast as our policies and our laws. And part of why we are not moving in that is that still patriarchy is still at play. Misogyny is still at play, where there's still dominance, where, there's an undervalue that is happening. The gender-based violence that affects women, that targets women, and that also targets additionally vulnerable groups. We are still there. And until we unlock the dynamics of gender, until we unlock patriarchy and eradicate toxic masculinity, there's no competition between men and women. There isn't. And I think man has to unlearn that. Man has to empower themselves in that. There is no competition. What we want is to say, let's create equal opportunities where both men, women, and everybody else can feel that there is meaningful participation. So patriarchy is the big problem in social context.
So what do we do to encourage, as you referred to, the men to unlearn what they think is the norm? Because I say that in the context of where you are now. You are in a position perhaps of a lot more influence than you've ever been before, although you've always had influence as far as I'm concerned, but more so now.
I think the most important thing really is to work hand in hand and in solidarity and in allyship, having men play an active role intentionally for transformation agenda. This cannot only just a woman's job to demand a space, but men actually handing over that power, handing over the job opportunities, the empowerment opportunities. It must be a will, and we need men to champion the transformation agenda. And I think our role as a department, as much as to advocate and mainstream and ensure that there's proper coordination about women's empowerment, we want also to work hand in hand with all stakeholders, men in traditional leadership role, men in faith space, men in a private sector, in public sector, all sectors, including media playing a big role about educating society.
Well, I want to ask you about all those things and perhaps where we're getting it right, if anywhere. We'll do that right after this.
Yes.
Winners, finalists, fan favorites, and viral sensations from previous seasons of America's Got Talent return to the stage to compete for the All-Star title. Join Heidi Klum, Howie Mandel, and Simon Cowell as they decide who is the best of the best. The creme de la creme, the top dog, is in Tamatota. It's a festival of talent on America's Got Talent All-Stars. Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. on S3. Channel your best entertainment with America's Got Talent All-Stars. Only on S3. Open up.
Hey Mike, congratulations on your retirement.
Thanks, Andile. Are you preparing for it?
Yes, but not just for myself.
For you and?
For me and my employees.
Oh.
You know, since we moved to Old Mutual Corporate, their retirement funds have not only been safe and secure, but gaining competitive returns through exposure to diverse investment markets.
Impressive.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024, celebrates Team SA medalists.
South Africa 26, Australia 19. The bronze medal for South Africa from Paris 2024.
Olympic medal is very, very special, and sometimes you only realize it a year or two afterwards. I'm really grateful for our players that they could call themselves Olympic medalists.
For the love of the game.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
I've always said wherever you may be in the country, I'd love it when you give us a shout out and tell us where you're listening from. And, it could well be somewhere in Welkom, it could be Grahamstown, it could be Salt River in Cape Town, it could be somewhere around Bruma in Johannesburg or maybe Limpopo, wherever you may be, give us a shout out. And we do have some of them on Facebook. You can post it on Facebook, you can post it or tweet it out on the Twitter X platform, and you can also WhatsApp us anytime, 0614 104 107. And Vusi Matebura saying, listening from home, that's the Imboni Sweni Trust near White River. Aubrey Dabrios giving us a welcome, saying I'm listening and very grateful as well. And Dabishi Lion Mudao saying the National Pulse, happy Women's Day to all SFM women listeners. So thank you so much for that. Right, let's get back then to my guest as we wrap up the issue about what needs to happen next with the Deputy Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. That's the Deputy Minister, Steve Letsike. So we were saying, Deputy Minister, about what are the big success stories we have, and maybe in the few minutes we have remaining, you can share with us what you think is working, really working.
What's working is partnership, where we create opportunities of making sure that women-led initiatives, both in formal and in informal sector, really gets recognized. I think both women, including men, have an opportunity to really turn around the page of economic growth in our country. We just need to succinctly coordinate and coherence of approaches everywhere, not only in urban areas, but also in rural areas. The second part is that, we saw in education sector, in the green sector or climate change, there are initiatives that are emerging that really create opportunities for people, particularly women as well, to play that role. So that is working. What is also quite important is really to turn the leaf of gender-based violence. We cannot accept anymore as a country that women are still at the receiving end of this violation. And for us, what President has done in the policies that have been introduced is to say fast track where there's violation. But most importantly, President talks about prevention agenda. And now we need society at large work with us to ensure that we eradicate violence against women and young people.
So, early on, I think you mentioned the media, which I'll touch on next as well, but maybe here's the one before the media. Considering that point that I brought up earlier, that we certainly on side with regard to the values in terms of the lofty position women should be holding in South Africa, do you think, therefore, and I'm targeting specifically to government now and the different government departments, and I'm certainly talking about different political parties too, right? Why do you think there's been such a shortfall in terms of filtering down from those high values to grassroots? Because, obviously, if we have that pipeline connected, then we wouldn't be having this conversation.
No, indeed. I think sometimes as a country we must accept that we become complacent, and that's something that should be of concern to us as South Africa. That what South Africans really need, Ashraf, is the agency that don't become complacent. Everything that you make as a promise, it must be kept. Because if we undervalue, some of the opportunities or some of the responsibility, or we squander our own rules, we're more likely to create such conflict or disranklement in society. And I think it's very important when you look at the kind of leadership that must be provided consistently everywhere, including in communities. So we cannot squander it. And it's not only just the responsibility of government. Civil society NGOs are doing incredible work to partner. Interfaith or traditional leaders, even media for that matter, is doing incredible work. And I think we must show what is it that as a leaf of faith that we must show the narrative of South Africa, that we all know as a resilient country, that there's so much positivity, there's so much growth, and that we can show much more than the negative aspect. And when there is negativity, we must move from it and turn that page to show what we can do better.
But the role of media is significant. How much of it must be to shed a light on issues in a positive light, as well as ask the critical questions?
Correct. Look, Ashraf, you cannot take away the freedom of media. And I think for me that primary is quite important. But I think also in terms of that freedom of being critical, the freedom of demonstrating the reality and the actual reality that people are experiencing is very important. But also the media is a tool of education to say, even in this reality, these are options for solutions. Media also plays a role as a solution maker of showing where we can go potentially, because you've got mass attention, you've got mass pool of audience that actually wants to listen to be better and do better, and media can also do better and be better for South Africa.
Lastly, what needs to happen next as a matter of urgency?
What needs to happen next is that communities, at the community level, at societal level, in our villages, township, must wage a war against poverty, wage a war against unemployment, because not a few people can be recipients of the economic growth. It can be. So is that what if in my community in Atteridgeville, what are the opportunities that we must create for Atteridgeville people? What are the opportunities that we must create for Lusikisiki everywhere, in rural, in townships, and urban areas, so that we can grow everywhere and not only in urban and towns or metros for that matter.
Well, I tell you what, it's been an important conversation we've had, and I think you've set the agenda on issues that we must certainly pick up in the days ahead, because we are the national pulse, so we do need to reflect exactly what the feelings are of the nation. So Deputy Minister Steve Letsike, the Deputy Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, I appreciate you giving off your time. Thank you so much. Right, let's now get the news. It's 4 o'clock.
Thank you, Ashraf. Water tankers deployed after Malmesbury Dam collapse, and Ramaphosa addresses Women's Day event. Good afternoon. Water tankers have been deployed to riverlands near Malmesbury in the Western Cape, where hundreds of residents are without water and power after 2 dam walls collapsed yesterday. The Western Cape Environmental Affairs Minister, Anton Bredell, says the local Swartland municipality is supplying water to the community on a temporary basis until the networks are repaired. He says clean-up operations will continue throughout the weekend and a full damage assessment will be done. President Cyril Ramaphosa has lamented the conditions under which many South African women live. He's acknowledged that much more needs to be done to advance women in the country. He was speaking on Women's Day, which commemorates the 1956 march by 20,000 women against the apartheid pass laws. Ramaphosa addressed the official commemoration at Pofadder in the Northern Cape.
When you want to understand poverty in South Africa, you just need to look at the face of a black woman, of a colored woman. Black women are more likely to be unemployed, to be poor, and to be unskilled. Cultural norms and practices continue to hold our women back. Many women in our country still do not have their homes, still do not have places where they can bring up their children. Many women in our country still live in shacks. And this is what we must correct.
Gauteng Department of Arts and Culture says it believes that government is progressing in improving women's emancipation. This emerged during the government's provincial Women's Day celebrations at the Union Buildings in Pretoria. The Gauteng Arts and Culture MEC Matomi Chilwani.
Today we're here to celebrate a milestone honoring the women of 1956. This is Women's Day. It's an annual celebration where we recognize the path that we've taken as a country since our democratic breakthrough. And I must say, as a nation, we've achieved a lot in the emancipation of our mothers, sisters, women. We've gone far. We've continued to demonstrate as a country as one of the top nations that moves towards the core improvement of women emancipation. And we've done well. I know that as government, we've always been consistent.
Legal analyst Tanes Bezuidenhout says the Free State High Court considered factors such as not prejudicing the state or the accused after a judge struck off the roll the 280 million rand Estina dairy farm corruption case on Wednesday. The accused include former MEC Mosebenzi Zwane, as well as Gupta Associates and linked companies. The lawyers of the accused argued in court that the matter be struck off the roll, citing high costs the accused have to pay each time they appear in court. Bezuidenhout elaborates.
The court takes into account all the relevant factors to the situation. One would expect, however, that in this instance, that one can maybe say when the fact that the accused hasn't pleaded yet means that the matter can be reinstated de novo. In other words, just because the matter was struck off the roll doesn't mean that the accused is entitled to a verdict of acquittal or should be regarded as innocent in this instance. So the state can bring the matter again to court. It is not a permanent stay of prosecution when the court orders that the matter be struck off the roll in terms of Section 342 Big A.
The Sudanese government says it's sending a delegation to Saudi Arabia to consult with the US regarding an invitation to take part in ceasefire talks. The talks, expected to be held in Switzerland on Wednesday next week, aim to end the 15-month war between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. The top story is that water tankers have been deployed near Malmesbury in the Western Cape, where hundreds of residents are without water and power after 2 dam walls collapsed. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Goos.
In your sports this hour, Boxing South Africa partners with G Sport and Barcelona signs Almo. More details at 4:30.
Catch the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2. Contestants are taken on a flavor journey and must work in teams to bake a colorful, multi-layered cake inspired by the smooth vibes of a tropical island. Featuring special guest judges Mimi and Holly from Baking with the Rays. That's the Tastemaster Junior, Tuesdays at 7, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. Only on SABC2.
The Miss South Africa 2024 finale will be live on Saturday, the 10th of August at 6 p.m. from the Sunbet Arena, Times Square, Menlyn, Maine. Good evening, Mzansi! Get your tickets for this crowning moment by going to missa.co.za, downloading the official Miss SA app, or purchasing your tickets on ticketpro.co.za. Come and witness it live.
SAFM is celebrating its 88th birthday, and what better way to celebrate than with you, our loyal listener. We will be giving away 8,800 to 10 lucky listeners during the month of August. To stand a chance of winning, stay tuned to SAFM and SMS the keyword SAFM88 followed by your name to 41391 and listen to the station throughout the day, where you could be selected as a winner. SMSs are charged at R1.50 per SMS. Free SMSs and SMS bundles do not apply. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Certainly, many people sending their posting where they're listening from. It's great that you do that. Send a picture of yourself, and better still, a picture of yourself together with your dial locked onto SAFM, wherever you may be in South Africa, in the Southern African region, on the continent, around the world, because you can listen, you know that, via, live on radio. You can listen on streaming live. You can also catch us on YouTube. You can also catch us by downloading the new SABC Plus app for really good reception. So you have no excuses really to be connected to the National Pulse. If you wish to comment on my conversation with the Deputy Minister, Steve Letsike, well, I'd love you to do that. His thoughts on government, on grassroots, on the issues of the role of the media, and maybe some other issues that were omitted. I think economic empowerment in Parliament across the board. I mean, we don't need numbers to tell us. There's no question that the parity that we talk about is just still as far away as you can imagine. There's some elements of parity, but when we look at it nationwide, we're missing out big time. So here's a question from Glenn saying, Ashraf, we don't change a man's mindset. It has been influenced by culture throughout childhood. Let's change how our culture behavior, as most shows that the women's role remains in the kitchen. It's a global crisis from Brian. In fact, Brian Mabaya from Project Gland got that. Brian, I hear you. But I mean, the reality is, you talk about, changing your mindset and changing culture. Cultures change by the mindset changes of individuals. When individuals collectively come together, they then are in a position to change what is considered the norm. So, for example, in South Africa, up to 1990, thereabouts, the norm was apartheid is the way to go. That's the way we will run our lives, certainly for those in government. At some stage, there was a mindset shift. Whatever brought that upon, it required a cultural shift in that ruling party to enter into negotiations. That can happen. There's also been many countries where women in any form in Parliament, absolutely forbidden, and that has changed as well. So there are changes. And I hear you about mindset, but the relationship between mindset and culture is important, and things can change when enough people talk about it and talk about it significantly. But I'll tell you what, hey, you can give me your thoughts whenever you're up for it. 0614 104 107, WhatsApp, text, voice notes as well. And I'll take your calls too, 086 000 2032. I think Butana will talk to you as well pretty soon, okay? Let's talk about some of the issues that's been brought up in the news as as well, right? 220 Western Cape residents have been moved to shelters after 2 retention dams collapsed, causing flooding and destroying homes. That's in Malmesbury, in a place called Chatsworth, just outside Malmesbury. It is understood that 50 homes were swept away, leaving over 400 people in need of, well, urgent, serious humanitarian assistance. Let's find out more with the representative from the Gift of the Givers in the Western Cape, Ali Sabli. Ali, appreciate your time. You're live with the National Pulse. Hello.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You know, it's sad, and I was saying this off the air to my producer Keys about the critical role, certainly, that Gift of the Givers plays when it comes to providing the type of humanitarian assistance. And you wonder if we're ever going to reach a stage where we don't need this type of assistance, but then pops up an issue like we've just heard of, this dam wall collapse, and suddenly you're first on the scene to provide the assistance. So what has happened so far, and very importantly, what type of assistance has been rendered?
You know, Ashraf, it's a double tragedy for the people of Riverland, Chatsworth, and Dussenberg, the areas that were affected by the dam burst. The rain is currently pouring down in this area, and we can see the concern of the community. No electricity, no clean drinking water for the last 24 hours. The community does not know how to start. They move the elderly people and the young women with children to community halls, but people are sitting in their homes that are completely washed away. Just today we were seeing community looking through this debris, looking through the sluice, if they could find anything left from their homes. We find we're going into homes that were partially damaged, but which people have lost everything. They could save nothing. Their furniture completely destroyed. So we could see the emotions are very high. We're walking around in the area at the moment. Gift of the Givers received calls at 5 a.m. yesterday morning. The community members and the local Swartland municipality officials gave us a call informing us that a dam wall has burst. We then came to know, going on to site, it was 2 dams. When the pressure from the one that dam put tremendous pressure on the second dam, and it as well burst its wall. And then after that was total destruction. Roads have washed away. People's home completely destroyed. School, lucky, it was a half a day of the schools had to be closed. Lucky today's a public holiday. To walking around the school today, you could see there's some damage there as well. We're hoping that can be cleared up when schools opens up on Monday. Gift of the Givers were on the ground to assist with the basic and urgent humanitarian needs required: hot meals, blankets, personal hygiene care packs. Today in a meeting, it was a concern raised of clean drinking water. All the infrastructure pipes were washed away. It will be lots of work for the engineers, although they are working in this condition, but it doesn't look good as more rain is coming down. We've deployed extra 2 water tankers to come from the Eastern Cape that will hopefully reach the Western Cape by tomorrow. It's being put immediately into work. The municipality has 3 of their own water tankers, but the situation is not looking good on the ground.
So let's look at the facts about the humanitarian aspect, which is, so have I got that right? 50 homes washed away, right?
55 homes washed away.
Okay.
Then there are many homes that are partially damaged, and there's not enough space in the community halls to accommodate these people. And some people are afraid to move from their place. They're scared people will steal from their items. So 55 homes completely washed away. Many other homes partially damaged. And the main damage is Ashraf as well. People, there's no electricity. So whatever food you have in the fridge that was left over of your food, you have to throw away because the power is out for the last 48 hours now. Yeah. And there's no clean drinking water as well.
And it's pouring, which just makes it even more complicated, right? It's a bit of a it's a nightmare. I mean, what's the morale like of the people? I mean, as they effectively fight for survival because their lives have changed forever.
Very low. The morale is very, very low, Ashraf. They have made an appeal for trauma counseling. Speaking to one lady, she said how she was lying down and she heard her dogs going crazy, and the next moment she woke up, she seen a fridge floating in front of her coming into her bedroom. One neighbor informing us she tried to run out of the back door. When she came out of the back door, the neighbor's car washed against the back door. They were panicking how they were going to escape. They had to then break the front door open to get the kids. At first reports, there were 2 children missing. And we're speaking to the mother today, how she grabbed onto the child and how they came downstream. If it wasn't for the railway the railway, where they grab onto the railway coming down, she said definitely should have lose 2 of her children. So their morale is very, very down at the moment. They're going to need all the support. And we are there to see to their basic needs because they do not know where to start. We know the officials are working around the clock to ensure basic services is up and going. Today we have seen on the ground as well, National Department of Human Settlements will be engaging with the family to see how can they assist them to rebuild their homes.
What then is your working relationship with the authorities?
We have a very good relationship on the ground with all the local disaster risk management teams, especially in the Western Cape. We've responded to many fires, and not too long ago, Ashraf, last month, we responded to one of the largest flooding in the Western Cape's history, where close to 200,000 people were affected. Our teams were on the ground since the 7th of July until not last week. So we are working very closely with the local officials in terms of the disaster risk management teams, the local law enforcement. So beforehand, they know the drill, how we work already. When we get on site, they escort our trucks through roads that are inaccessible, getting to ensure that communities are in a place of safety to ensure that there's no us in delaying the humanitarian aid to those affected.
And the last thing, people are listening to you, and of course they're listening to you nationwide, some people even globally because they catch us on streaming live via the SABC Plus app. What can we do?
There's a dire need for the moment for clean drinking water. There's many elderly people who cannot come to access to the water tanker trucks, and this will be off for a month. There won't be any access to water for close to a month. There's an urgent need of warm blankets and personal hygiene care packs. Those who want to contribute, our toll-free number is 0800 786 911.
0800 786 911. Well, I'll tell you what, Ali, I hope you guys can get things together. As always, the sense of absolute destruction and like what now for the future is something that, escapes those that don't know, right? And I mean, you see it at first hand. So best wishes to you and to the community rallying around each other and those who are assisting them in that community just outside Malmesbury, that's in Chatsworth, in Malmesbury, in the Western Cape. Ali Sablé is the representative from the Give to the Givers in the Western Cape. Thank you so much for your time. Right, I'll take your calls after this.
SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024, celebrates Team SA medalists.
Alan Hatherley of South Africa, as he steps up to receive the bronze medal at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. He is the first South African medal in cycling since 1912. Rudolf Lewis won the individual time trial. Congratulations, Alan Hatherley. Your country is proud of you.
For the love of the game.
It's Truck Month at Ford, which means you save big when you upgrade to the ultimate adventure-ready 4x4. Get the Ford Ranger Tremor for only $876,600, which comes standard with off-road features like adaptable Bilstein shocks and easy clean flooring. That's only $876,600 at your nearest Ford dealer today. T&Cs apply.
The Miss South Africa 2024 finale will be live on Saturday, the 10th of August at 6 p.m. from the Sunbet Arena, Times Square, Menlyn, Maine. Good evening, Mzansi! Get your tickets for this crowning moment by going to misssa.co.za, downloading the official Miss SA app, or purchasing your tickets on ticketpro.co.za. Come and witness it live.
SA Women's Struggles Journal. Celebrating 30 years of democracy towards women's development. On this Women's Day, SAFM celebrates the incredible strength, wisdom, and achievements of women everywhere. To all the amazing women, thank you for your endless contributions and inspiration. Happy Women's Day. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Well, what gets your pulse rate working today? What gets the national pulse rate working? There are different things. Certainly Women's Day would be topmost, but it's not that. I mean, as you've also heard, it's that and more as regarding the issue of continuing issue of Chidima Adetshina. And we understand there's a big arts and culture organization that effectively have said, well, we're going to do something on South Africa. And that's it. We're not going to do anything about it. I'll tell you more about that later on. Let's get your calls. Butana in Rosebank. Hello.
Good afternoon, my brother.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
But the voluntary laws that have been put in place by ANC government, the PE law, the employment equity law, they are not consequential. They are not helpful. And the minister is repeating, deputy minister is repeating that, and he thought that things will change through campaign. You must use the levers of government to change the situation. And the laws must be consequential. People must be forced to change through the law. That will happen. But when you ask people voluntarily to do it, it's not going to happen. But it's going to happen among the ANC people. That is why they are so joyous and happy, saying our laws are working for them.
So what would you change? What would you change that needs changing now?
What I will change, I'll make this employment equity law enforceable. If you don't comply with that, there must be consequence. The PE must be enforceable. If there's no compliance, there must be consequence. Simple as that.
Okay.
You've got levers of power.
Well, it's something that many people have raised on many, many occasions. There must be consequences. What I wonder. Butana, thanks for that call, right? Let's get to some of your WhatsApp comments. We spoke about Ukraine earlier on, remember?
After Ashraf, the conflict in Ukraine is in the interest of the U.S. Because if you listen to the U.S. White House spokesperson when he says that what Ukraine is doing in Kursk is still on the U.S. interest, is what the weapons were agreed to be used. So it is clear that the U.S. and its allies are not interested in peace. And unfortunately, the BBC or CNN or this Sky News are on the side of the West. So I think if we can get a view of a different media house where we can be told what is really happening in Ukraine and the Russian Federation, because currently what we're getting is a biased view from the Western media. Because even now your clip was not saying anything about the issue that is happening now in Kursk.
Well, it's a short clip that just reflects what's happened. I hear you. Okay, thank you for that. I'll tell you what, just maybe what we need to do, because we haven't done it for a long time, certainly not since I've been on hosting the National Pulse in the last 4 months, has been, getting an analysis of Ukraine and Russia, what happens now. That type of just broad analysis of like, where do we go with this attrition or not? So thanks for that call as well. Let's get another comment on the issues of the conversation about human waste.
Hi, Ashraf. Good afternoon. Lovely environmental initiative of burning the human waste and using it. I wanted to find out, in terms of the energies that are involved to heat that waste, how is that done? I just want to know, because we've got a challenge anyway in terms of energy. We've got a challenge with electricity, we've got a challenge with firewood as a source of energy. So I'm just wondering, what type of energy sources are used to achieve that?
Okay, good question. I mean, I can't give you the answers right now, but perhaps maybe just Google the company. It's called CareDev. Now, let me spell it out for you. C-A Dev. So capital C-A, Dev, D-E-V, like development dev, right? And then hyphen or dash capacity. So CareDev capacity development. Okay, CareDev capacity development. Maybe Google them and check them out. You'll find all that you need to know, hopefully, in terms of the questions you've asked. Here's another one that's very related to some of the issues we've just touched on earlier.
Mr. Ashraf Garda. How are you? Innocent here from Cape Town. Ashraf, I want to talk about the issue regarding this Miss S.A. Adetshina. I'm a bit concerned because everyone is putting the blame on the mother and on her. But why is no one talking about the Home Affairs officials who issued the fraudulent document? Why is it so hard to find accountability towards the Home Affairs officials? Innocent here from Cape Town. Can anyone answer me that? Thank you.
Well, look, I think it's been said already that, I think we have to separate different people here. That the Miss South Africa candidate was one person, the mother is another person, the father is another. We do know that the Miss South Africa candidate we know now is stepped out from that position as a finalist. We know that, right? The other issue is regarding the mother and the issue of, a potential fake ID. So that's a legal issue. I mean, and, it just happened, right? But one of the things that's come through very clearly that if, for example, she's done what she's done and got away with it, there had to be an insider within Home Affairs to have assisted her. So I would think there will be an investigation on that. Of course, it doesn't happen in one day. That will happen. I'm pretty sure about that.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
One of the issues we speak about is load shedding. But as sort of load shedding issues take a backseat, the issues of water is something we focused on a lot in the last few weeks on the show. And whenever I ask you to say, give me a sense of where you're living and what's your regular water supply, I'm amazed, just amazed, how many people around the country do not have that basic human right of regular flowing water. And then, if I ask you the question, those that have had regular water supply, how many of you have had that disconnection for whatever reason, not personal disconnection, just a cut off in water supply, and you go without running water for months on end? It's a big, big issue, isn't it? So with that in mind, let's talk about the Mamerotse village near Rustenburg in the Northwest Province, right? They're grappling with a severe water crisis for more than 6 months. Listen to that, 6 months. Residents are pointing a finger at the Royal Bafokeng administration, questioning why it's only their village that has now been subjected to water tinkering, as opposed to water drinking. The areas under Royal Bafokeng are not serviced by the Rustenburg local municipality. Instead, the traditional house of Royal Bafokeng buys water directly from the Machalis and Rand water boards to recirculate it into its villages. So Cholofelo Mohami brings us this report.
Mamerotse village is one of the 29 villages under the Royal Bafokeng administration. The village has more than 400 households. Residents here lack water, while other residents seemingly have uninterrupted water supply. This disparity has left residents unhappy.
We face significant water challenges in Mamerotse. There's no water supply here, yet there are other villages that have access to water.
Personally, I am unwell. I rely on asthma inhaler. I struggle to breathe. I have to boil water provided through water tankering.
To mitigate this water crisis, Royal Bafokeng administration introduced water tankering. However, residents allege that water from the tanks is not of good quality.
The water they bring is not clean and is often delivered late, around 5 p.m. This results in long queues for residents waiting for water and getting home late.
But the Royal Bafokeng administration has attributed the poor supply of water to the area to low pressure at some of their 20 reservoirs. Obakeng Petwa is the acting manager of Royal Bafokeng administration.
There are certain of our villages that are what we call high-lying type of villages. The village would be at a higher point than the reservoir. The reservoir would sort of be at a lower point. So one of the challenges that Mamerotse sort of receives is that with the lesser pressure of water coming from the water board, the water, because it comes weak, as the pressure is weak, it struggles to reach the reservoir at Mamerotse, which is the Mutike reservoir, one of the 20 reservoirs that the Royal Bafokeng administration has built. Firstly, it's because we are receiving less than what we are used to, so the pressure is low. We have aging infrastructure ourselves on our side, and that leads to leaks in the villages. We are working tirelessly to fix those leaks and to come up with different strategies.
The megaliters provided by Machalisi board has allegedly decreased. Royal Bafokeng has refuted claims that this is due to their inability to foot their being. Petro elaborates.
We don't owe Magali's Water for all the water that they supply. What do I mean? If they've supplied us with 30 megaliters of water, we have verified it, we have paid them that. There are certain readings that between ourselves and Magali's Water we are disputing. And I think it's a technical issue that verifies that what Magalis is charging us actually correlates with our own check meter so that we pay for what we have received. mme lebaka leo le simolope re simolotse gore dijo tse teng tsa rona le tsone re di kolomake gore kgona go bona gore sentle a ke metsi a dikaraka a tlang a lebeswe kgotsa a nna letswe ga a tsena mo dijo teng so ke mabaka a lebeletseng gore bakwena ba kgone go bona a ntseng sentle.
Magali's Water declined to respond to SABC inquiry on the nature of their partnership with Royal Bafokeng Administration. As the crisis persists, residents are calling for immediate intervention, asking Royal Bafokeng to hand over its infrastructure to the Rustenburg local municipality. Solvelo Mohami in Mamirotse outside Rustenburg.
And I tell you what, that story, what's the lousy thing, what's the scary thing about that story is like, it's so common. It's business the norm. How can that change? It has to change, isn't it? Okay, it's a public holiday, as we know, so we don't have sports. We don't have news. We have sports. To me, it's like picking up a hand to say we do have sport. We don't have news headlines. We don't have finance crossings as we normally do around this time. We also don't have traffic, but it does mean we have you, and it's really great that you're a part of it. Give us your thoughts on any of the big issues that moves the national pulse today. 0614 104 107. Let's have that conversation that certainly moves you. You can call in live 086 000 2032. To me, let's talk sport.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Right, to me, what's your big story now?
Well, Boxing South Africa has now joined hands with G-Sport on a year-long partnership to increase the visibility of women in boxing. Now, the partnership aims to attract greater interest in the sport, and they'll be doing it through masterclasses, mentorship programs, and content creation, amongst others. And here's women's boxing manager Colleen McAusland.
I'm super excited to see that Boxing South Africa has collaborated with G-Sport. We've been working with G-Sport for some time. They've always invited us to their events, and it's great news because G-Sport are always taking women to the next level when it comes to showcasing them. And we take this opportunity to thank G-Sport for what they're doing for women in boxing and in sport in general. So thank you. We're looking forward to a great future ahead.
Moving on to cricket, it is day 3 of the first test between the Proteas and West Indies. The Proteas were bowled out for 357. It's still the first innings, and West Indies are currently sitting on 12 for no loss in the 6th over. Meanwhile, Deputy Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Peace Mabe, has praised Team South Africa for their remarkable success at the Olympic Games. Mabe has arrived in Paris to witness the final 3 days of this global sporting event. Team South Africa securing 4 medals, 2 in swimming, with Tatiana Smith earning a gold and a silver, bronze from Blitzbox and another bronze from mountain biker Alan Hatherley, surpassing the 3 medals that were won from the previous Olympics in Tokyo 2020. And here she is expressing her satisfaction with the team's performance.
Well, so far, so good. We are doing well. There is no doubt that the second round, the Paralympians will definitely do well. They never disappoint. But with those that have participated here, we are proud of you. It is not always about winning, but it's about being part of the team. It's about representing the country and being able to finish. That's what is important. So we are grateful for what we have.
Well, South African middle distance runner Adrian Wilschat believes that Athletics South Africa should adopt a development model similar to that of SA Rugby, nurturing talent from the school level to ensure future success. He recently finished 10th in the men's 10,000 meter final at the Stade of France, setting a personal best and new national record of 26 minutes 60.62 seconds. Based in United States, he is confident that South Africa has the potential to compete against the world's top nation in the Olympics, but emphasized the need to establish proper structures from the grassroots level.
in the high schools, if you look, I keep on comparing athletics to rugby. It's not the same thing, I understand that, but it's just an example of how to become a great national team in that facility. If you look at rugby, it's been done from high school level, Craven Vic, all the different levels, and they've been able to win 2 World Cups. And I think it doesn't have to be to the same scale, but if we can be able to develop that from a high school, just like in the US, where it's done from high school, middle school, and then into collegiate running, it develops athletes. And look at who was third, an American, you know what I'm saying? So again, I think we have to work a lot in the development stages of our athletes, because the result is not going to come from the top, but it's going to start from the bottom, and it is a process to work that from the bottom up.
In football, Barcelona have announced the signing of Daniel Olmo from RB Leipzig on a 6-year deal for a reported €60 million. Olmo finished as joint top scorer at the Euro 2024 with 3 goals as he helped La Roja win the competition for a record 4th time. The 26-year-old played for Barcelona at youth level from joining Dynamo Zagreb in 2014. Then in rugby, captain Lusanda Dampke leads a formidable Bulls Daisies side in the final of the 2024 SA Rugby Women's Premier Division at Loftus Versfeld Stadium tomorrow evening. The two finalists will meet around 9:15 under the lights and full moon of Tshwane skies. Now, Dampke forms part of a forward pack that assembles Saneliswe Chali, Xolelwa Diliza and Yonelwa Ngixolo at the front, and Vaina Ubisi and Sineli Tanoxele combining at lock, and the skipper will be alongside Faith Chauke on the flank, with Sophie Mashapa slotting in at the 8th. On that note, it is a wrap from my side. I'll have more in the next hour.
Listen, I want to ask you, that first report you read about our results at the Olympic Games, I mean, so who said it's remarkable?
Right? It is the Deputy Minister.
It's not you who said that.
No.
So just repeat the quote.
The Deputy Minister says it is a remarkable success at the Olympic Games, and these 4 medals are they satisfied with these 4 medals.
We need to call the Deputy Minister.
How?
For a country of this nature, I mean, in terms of the facilities we have, that's been able to host a netball World Cup that comes to mind, a cricket World Cup, a football World Cup, a rugby World Cup, and other major events, and we're satisfied with 4.
How?
Okay. I'll expect you to find answers for us next week or in the week ahead. It's ridiculous.
Like, it's either our expectation level is too low, or she's saying remarkable based on how we did in the previous Olympics, because we only came back with 3 and now we're sitting at 4.
But that's nothing. Even if we get 5 or 6, which I'd love to, we're not getting 15.
And remember what I said at the beginning when you asked me how many medals do you think South Africa is going to get? I said the least we could get is at least up to 10.
Okay.
So maybe 7, maybe 8, 4.
Well, there we are. Something has to happen. I mean, I do remember a long time ago when I was a lighty playing football, and I was probably a 7-year-old lighty. We played against the best team in the league at the time, and they promised us 20-0 because we were the worst team and they were the best team. And they said, we are going to thump you guys 20-0. Well, I'll tell you what, we only lost 2-0 and we celebrated. Okay. And we went all the way running home to say we only lost 2-0. It was like the greatest day of our lives. I just hope South Africa at the Olympics doesn't have that same attitude of like, well, we got 4, which is brilliant. Like, no. Okay, more sport in an hour, right?
The Serengeti, located on the northern part of Tanzania, bordering Kenya on the north and Ngorongoro in the south. Home to the African Big Five and millions of zebras, birds and other predators. Serengeti 2 returns to the unspoiled corner of the Serengeti for more animal drama. There's humor, heartbreak and nail-biting tension as new characters move in and familiar faces continue their stories. Channel your inner adventurer with Serengeti 2, Sundays at 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Welcome to the team, Andile.
Thank you.
What will be your first order of business?
Well, ensuring our greatest assets are taken care of.
Our vehicle fleet?
No,
our employees. You see, I want them to feel confident in our company's employee benefits, and Old Mutual Corporate is perfect for that. They take care of everything, from retirement benefits to health and group risk solutions, consulting, and more. Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024, celebrates Team SA medalists.
South Africa 26, Australia 19. The bronze medal for South Africa from Paris 2024.
Olympic medal is very, very special, and sometimes you only realize it a year or two afterwards. I'm really grateful for our players that they could call themselves Olympic medalists.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, let's get your calls, let's get your thoughts, and certainly if you're up for it, what about tweeting wherever you may be on this public holiday, Women's Day, wherever you may be around the country, either a picture of yourself or just the community of the town that you're in, if you're really brave enough, just even also maybe with your picture locked, with your dial locked into SAFM. Certainly Noel Crowley is doing just that from Kalk Bay. Nice picture, Noel. I'm looking at it, getting down to the sea with those steps. I mean, typical beachfront picture. You, the lucky guy, absolutely. Let's get on to other issues in Polokwane. We go with Moktetwa on the line. Wants to comment on that issue that we raised about water. Good chatting to you. Hi. What's your point?
Hi, Ashraf, how are you?
I'm very good indeed. Right, what do you want to raise?
No, I want to raise with regard to the issue of the water investment bank, right? The municipality and the people in the community, they're complaining that like the Royal Bafokeng should hand over the infrastructure into the municipality to manage the infrastructure. But the people should also remember that like that infrastructure, it belongs to Royal Bafokeng, doesn't belong to the municipality. The issue that they need to have, Royal Bafokeng doesn't have a duty to provide water to them, but the municipality does. So the municipality should do its due diligence, and their councillors should not try to shift the blame to the Royal Bafokeng House, because Royal Bafokeng was trying to assist the community by doing its duty. By now taking the infrastructure from Royal Bafokeng, I think that is not fair, because like that is like when we are saying go and grab the land without compensation. Go and grab whatever without compensation, because that is a private-owned infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, it's privately owned, but you see the problem is if it's privately owned, I mean, fine. But if ultimately the residents of that community don't get what they want, they're going to be hurtful. That's just how it goes. You know, people don't care who owns what.
Yes, the people, they're not getting what they want, right? But are they complaining against the rightful perpetrator or a culprit or whatever the name in the absence of saying the correct word?
Well, that's the $1 million question. Got that. Thanks for that call, Moktetwa, right? And then we got some voice notes on some of the issues we've got. I understand that Russia has now banned its airlines from flying in Israeli airspace starting tonight until August 16. It's a story that we certainly must make a note of. Remember, that's as a volatile region, and there were potential discussion around, an Iranian attack on Israel. That hasn't happened, as far as I know. Let's get some thoughts on some of the other issues.
Hi, Ashraf. Errol from Durban here. Your one caller said it's the USA doesn't want peace. It's not the USA. It's the Russia that doesn't want peace. They're the ones that attacked first, and they won't give up until they got what they wanted, to annihilate the Ukraine. Errol from Durban.
Got that, Errol. I'll tell you what, I mean, literally I agree with you, but on the other hand, that area is so complex, the issues, and I'm not suggesting I must bat for the Russians, not at all. But you also have a situation where one may say the allowing of the UN influence in that part of NATO is a provocation. It's getting the bullies to effectively come outside your door and what you expect. So I'm just saying to you, in those superpowers that we know about, I think that we have a problem with, and we should have a problem with all of them. Let's put it that way. Here's another thought.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and SAFM listeners. Wonderful, wonderful speeches by the President in the past few days and about what should be done for women and issues about accountability and consequence management. However, it is typical for the ANC to come to the public devoid of actions and nothing but speeches that are pleasing to the ears of the public. If the president is serious about accountability and consequence management, it begins by him telling us why he had hidden money on his farm. Unless we see such actions, unfortunately, this country will continue to be governed by ANC speeches. Thanks, Lionel Woodbank.
Governed by ANC speeches. Lionel, that's a nice speech from you, by the way. Okay, got your point. Here's another one on the issue of the 4 medals.
Hey, Ashraf, I was also shocked to hear that remarkable comment because, I thought, 4 medals. And you're saying it's a remarkable achievement. I thought maybe because I don't care about sport, I might not be aware of the challenge of the Olympics. But 4 medals, remarkable. Chalk and cheese. I figure like Gabecha.
Well, there you are. Well, I think, we are aligned to that, absolutely. Let's get on to other issues. So here's one. Let's understand where we are regarding the whole Miss South Africa story regarding Chidima Adetshina. Now, we know that she's withdrawn. That's one. The issue of her mother, unnamed officially, that is, she may well be charged in the days ahead. There could be a counter. There could be defense on it. We don't really know what's bound to happen. But there's been a sense, certainly from many people, that on the one hand, 2 narratives. Because of what happened in the beginning, that means with a fake identity for her mother, maybe alleged so, that everything that emanates from that in terms of her child, the school that the child went to, the university and any other grants, that all must be disqualified. And therefore, one must eliminate, eliminate not just the influence, but the benefits that Chidima Adetshina may have had already. That's the one school of thought. The other one is that, what happens to the mother, let that take its course. But the child was born in South Africa, has got a document that I understand is not false, right? And whatever may have happened, it's a child. So how then do you discard that child's rights? Now, I say that because here's a fascinating one from Tuso van Zyl, who's tweeted that I think is worth a conversation. Duso says, the South African Sports Minister, Gayton McKenzie, was a thug. Spent many years in prison for armed robbery, or robberies, in fact. His kids are not blamed for the crimes he committed. Xenophobic South Africans are blaming Chidema for her mother's crimes. Xenophobic South Africans are an embarrassment to South Africa. Does that tweet identify an important issue? Tell you what, just you think about that one there. There's certainly much to consider on that. I'll take your calls on that. In fact, what I can do as well, just on that issue, that's so relevant to what we just spoke about now. There's an organization called the Puebla International Literature Festival. And they've put out a note penned by Ikena Oke saying, we regret to announce, this was, last night, right? We regret to announce the decision to rescind South Africa's designation as the country in focus for this year's festival, and to also rescind the invitation of our South African guests. This decision has been made after careful consideration of recent developments that have deeply troubled the African community. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it says it is with deep sadness that we acknowledge the distressing events in South Africa, where the apparatuses of the state, coupled with the troubling silence of many within the cultural sphere, have enabled a climate of mob rule. This has led to the victimization of Chidema Adetshina, her family, and members of the immigrant communities in South Africa, thus undermining the very principles of justice, equality, and human dignity that literature seeks to uphold. In fact, let me read the next paragraph too. The Pueblo International Literature Festival aims to position itself as a beacon for the celebration of diverse voices, cultures, and ideas. We believe that literature has the power to challenge the status quo, to speak to authority, and to give a voice to the voiceless. However, we cannot in good conscience honor a country as a focal point of our celebration when it's currently embroiled in such profound injustices as has been currently gathering momentum following the Miss South Africa beauty pageantry. Our decision is not a rejection of the rich literature and the many courageous writers, poets and artists of South Africa who continue to inspire the world. Instead, it is a statement against the current state of affairs that contradicts the values we hold dear. We stand in solidarity with those who are fighting for justice, both within South Africa and across the globe. We shall continue to support and provide platforms for South African writers and thinkers who are working towards positive change. However, we believe it is crucial to send a clear message that cultural recognition cannot be divorced from ethical responsibility. The Puebla International Literature Festival remains committed to fostering dialogue, understanding, and solidarity among nations. We invite the global literary community to join us in this endeavor as we reflect on the role of literature in confronting the challenges of our time. Here's a question to you. A lot has been said about what's happened, the impact that it's had on Miss South Africa, the actual organizing, the competition, right? The impact it's had on the mother of the Miss South Africa finalist, the impact that it's had on the former Miss South Africa finalist, Chidema Adetshina, and a father too. And here's another one. What impact in terms of how this entire issue has been handled, notwithstanding if you're here illegally and you falsified an ID document, there's going to be trouble for you. So let's get that right. Nobody's saying that's okay. But the overall handling of it, what impact has that had, or will it have, on the South African nation brand? Just think about that. Maybe I've got it wrong, but I'd like you to share your opinions, because this is the National Pulse. You are a mirror to the pulse of the nation, and you drive it very much with your comments. 0614 104 107 to call in 086 000 2032. Yeah, what impact does this entire issue have on the nation brand? You tell me, in the way that a gold medal for Botswana has on their nation brand.
Paying your TV license means that you can tune in to the Expresso Morning Show from 6 to 9 a.m. Mondays to Fridays right here on S3. Enjoy our entertainment, recipes, and important current affairs and updates. All of this for less than 74 cents a day or 265 Rand for an entire year. For superfast, secure, and convenient payment from any device, go onto tvlrc.co.za and click on the Fast Pay button for payment in under 3 minutes. Make a difference with Expresso and TV licenses and pay yours.
You know what, South Africa? We're just not talking about enough. Huh? Use it in public. Use it in the taxi. Use it at the library. Hey, Yes. Some might think it impolite, but successful people use it all the time. At restaurants, with friends, in boardrooms. Commands respect, eh? Oh. Finances is not a dirty word. Let's start talking about it, Mzansi. Find out how at livewithconfidence.co.za. Sanlam Life is a licensed life insurer, financial services, and registered credit provider.
SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024, celebrates Team SA medalists.
The Olympic medalist, Tatiana Smith, representing South Africa.
Tears of joy will certainly flow for Tatiana Smith.
Silver.
I think this one is much different than any of my races. I'm so fortunate to get a medal.
For the love of the game.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
So, there's been lots of talk in the last few weeks about that military training camp of Libyan nationals in South Africa in White River, right? So here's another one. There's now talk about a military camp that was found in Limpopo. What's that all about? Warrant Officer Letunia Murawa is the spokesperson for Hawks in the Limpopo province. Appreciate your time, Warrant Officer. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
No, thank you very much. Let me greet you and greet the listeners.
Thank you so much. Right. Tell me what's happened here regarding this military camp. Is there one who's running it?
No. Let me rectify. Let me clarify something there. This is not a military camp. It's where people were training, security-related training. It's not a military-related training. Let me say, of course, yesterday on the 8th, we, as the Hawks in Limpopo province, we went to this place assisted by public order policing, local criminal record center, tactical response team, and Modimolle Vispol, where we pounced in that alleged firearm training facility at Modimolle and raided several firearms and ammunition. So here we received the information from the unknown person who informed us about the suspicious training camp in one of the farms at Modimolle. And then we contacted our operations, we went there, and then we found that indeed there is a training that is taking place. We found people with licensed firearm, rifles, pistol, and we also have or confiscated the ammunition. So the purpose of this training was security-related matters of training. So we cannot say it's military-based training because it cannot match the military.
Okay, so you're very comfortable, because I think that's really what we want to know is you're comfortable. Yeah. It's not a military not a military training ground. It's a security thing. And is that security training ground legitimate? That's all we need to know.
Yes, those people were training there. The point of the matter is that they were having the firearms, those rifles and other 9mm or the small handguns, where those firearms were not supposed to be there. So now we are concerned in how did they landed in that farm.
Okay. Well, I mean, maybe that's the answer. I mean, anything else you can tell us on that issue for now?
Anything that I can tell you in that issue is that we are now investigating how those firearms landed in that farm, because they are not belonging to this province. They are from a neighboring province. Okay, got that. I'm sure it's a story that you will look into over the next few days, and we will certainly talk to you about it. Much appreciate you giving off your time. Thank you so much. So there you are, a farm, a military base in Limpopo. That is not the case, as per the warrant officer Lechunia, right? Just giving his comments, right? Let's talk about other issues, including the Russians completely blindsided with regard to what's happening at the Olympic Games.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
So we do know that Russian athletes are not allowed to compete in the Paris Olympic Games because of that country's war with Ukraine. We just touched on it just now. Individuals, however, can do so, but not under the Russian flag, right? Now, Mariska Lasitskene won gold in the high jump in the 2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo. Is a three-time world champion. She's not there to defend her title. And there are more issues like that. I understand there's no television coverage of the Olympic Games, which I'm quite surprised about. But I mean, that's what happens when you have these issues that take place on a global scale that impacts, or sport impacts the globe, and the globe issues impact on sport, as we've just discovered. Now, the BBC's Russia editor is Steve Rosenberg, and he visited a nationalist group, their sports festival in Moscow.
It's not the same, and this certainly isn't Paris. But there is an Olympic champion on board. High jumper Maria Lasitskene is here to launch a fusion fashion, sports, music event. She's not in Paris defending her Olympic title. Team Russia is barred due to the war in Ukraine. Track and field stars from Russia aren't even allowed in as neutral athletes. And that hurts.
We should be there. I can't even bring myself to follow the athletics at these games. It's too painful. The Olympics are a festival, the greatest event in the world.
Not so, say the Russian papers. They've dubbed the Paris Olympics the Games of Satan, the Olympics of Hell, and potentially the worst in history. It looks like Russia wins the gold for sour grapes.
I thought Olympic Games are about sport, but now it's no longer about sport. It's about politics, religion, everything. There is no longer sport. And it's very sad, because the original idea of the Olympic Games was to create peace.
Russia has invaded Ukraine. That's not peace, is it?
Russia has been protecting their people.
Interest in the Olympics was sky high in Russia. Moscow hosted the 1980 Summer Games here, and it used to send hundreds of athletes to Olympic Games. This time round, only 15 Russians have been competing in Paris as neutral athletes. They've had to undergo a vetting process to prove that they don't actively support Russia's war in Ukraine. No vetting here. In a Moscow park, we found a Russian nationalist group organising a sports festival to whip up interest in traditional Russian recreations. It's a world away from Paris 2024. Some of this has nothing at all in common with sport. For the first time in 40 years, Russian TV isn't showing the Olympics. Few tears here. I haven't followed the Olympics for ages, Vadim says. So what that we can't watch it? Fighting talk. But having no team at the Olympics is a sign of Russia's isolation. No victory in that. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Moscow.
Okay, there you are. You see, there's so many issues. So it's like the rival Olympics, whatever you may want to call that, right? Here's a quick comment on the conversation we had about the military camps.
Hi, Ashraf and the SAFM listeners. May you please try and find out, Uri, what is happening in Limpopo with regard to these illegal military camps. We have been finding camps after camps. We have found 2 now. Is those the only 2 or there's still more? Please, something needs to happen and something needs to be understood. What is happening in Limpopo? What is happening in Limpopo in terms of like the police in Limpopo? Why are they not be able to track these things beforehand, before they happen?
Well, I hope you heard the conversation with the Hawk spokesperson. So, according to the spokesperson, when it comes to that issue in Limpopo, which is very different to what's happened in White River, right, in Mpumalanga, that's not a military camp. It's a security training camp. It's legal. What's been illegal is they found some guns there. That's another conversation. But the actual, there is legitimacy. If that sounds contradictory, then maybe you hear me and I hear you. But we will follow up on those issues. Just, are there more than these? It's rather puzzling. Let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock. Here's Greg Coase.
Thank you again, Ashraf. Slain EFF councillor laid to rest and calm restores to Bangladesh. Good day to you. EFF Johannesburg regional leader and councillor Moshe Mpahlele has been buried at his hometown in Leboagomo in Limpopo. He was shot and killed last Sunday in Alexandra, north of Johannesburg, during the removal of dwellers from COVID-19 temporary accommodation containers. The preliminary autopsy report has revealed that he was hit by rubber bullets and live ammunition. The EFF leader Julius Malema addressed mourners.
Under democratic South Africa, we still have our own children being killed with live ammunition. And Mpahlele was not killed during the protest. He was actually assassinated. Because if you follow the story, they waited for him to be isolated. When he moved away from his people to go and negotiate with the authorities, they shot him. No one has been arrested. If you said these people did not have accommodation during COVID, did the end of COVID give them accommodation? Why do you give them accommodation during COVID? And then after COVID, you evict them as if COVID gave birth to accommodation.
Water tankers have been deployed to riverlands near Malmesbury in the Western Cape, where hundreds of residents are without water and power after 2 dam walls collapsed yesterday. The Western Cape Environmental Affairs Minister Anton Bredell says the local municipality is supplying water to the community on a temporary basis until the networks are repaired. He says clean-up operations will continue throughout the weekend. The Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Ndisiwe Chikunga, says strides have been made to ensure the liberation of South African women. She says unlike the women who marched to the Union buildings in 1956 against past laws, women are now able to have their voices heard without fear of persecution. The Minister was speaking on the sidelines of the National Women's Day commemorations in Pofadder in the Northern Cape.
We are equals to men. We are ministers, we are deputy ministers, we are members of parliament, we are senior officials, we are CEOs out there in the private sector. We are also able now to air our voices and put our demands without any fear of being arrested like those women in 1956, where when they marched, eventually they were arrested. Nobody arrests us today when we air our views and we demand what we think is rightfully for women.
President of the ANC Veterans League, Snuki Sikalala, has warned that corrupt ANC leaders pose the danger of destroying the hard-earned legacy of the late struggle stalwart Rita Nzanga and other activists. He was speaking at Nzanga's tombstone unveiling at a Women's Day commemoration near Ventersdorp in the northwest.
There are people who have joined the ANC just because they are corrupt, just because they are there to service themselves and their families. In the last elections, we got 10 million people voting for the ANC. But now, 6.5 million voted for the ANC. 3.5 million people did not. And so those people stayed away because they were not happy, firstly, with service delivery. They were not happy with electricity outages. They're not happy with the provision of water. They were not happy with the potholes throughout the whole country. And so it is because of us.
Finally, police stations are slowly reopening in Bangladesh, guarded by the army after weeks of violent political turmoil. The BBC's Archana Shukla has the story.
Getting public trust, stopping violence is the biggest priority the government has at the moment. And with that peace and calm coming back on the streets, it is crucial to get the economic activity ball rolling. So getting your shops, your small businesses, banks, etc. working, very crucial for the economy. Remember, Bangladesh's economy had already been struggling and they need the domestic consumption ball rolling for the economic activity to pick up pace and for the economy to not go into a free fall.
Top story, EFF Johannesburg regional leader and councillor Moshe Mpahlele has been buried at his hometown in Limpopo. He was shot and killed last Sunday in Alexandra, north of Johannesburg. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khoos.
And in your sports this hour, he balloted to remain in charge of Sekhukhune United but won't sit on the bench, and Boxing South Africa partners with G Sport. More details at 5:30.
Babina Noko returns to the battlefield with a great strategy to display a melody of victory. But the citizens are shaking their heads. Eric Tinkler's boys are confident that they will land successfully in the last four. This is the MTN 8 quarter-final. Wafa Wafa. Catch Sekhukhune United FC and Cape Town City FC on Saturday, 10 August at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Everyone is just as important as you are. Stop gender-based violence. Treat others the way you want to be treated. No one deserves any form of violence. Report gender-based violence. Contact Lifeline South Africa toll-free number on your mobile phone. Call or WhatsApp 0800 150 150. That's 0800 150 150. Lifeline South Africa. Mental and emotional health for all. This is an SABC supported initiative.
SA Women's Struggles Journal. Celebrating 30 years of democracy towards women's development. On this Women's Day, SAFM celebrates the incredible strength, wisdom, and achievements of women everywhere. To all the amazing women, thank you for your endless contributions and inspiration. Happy Women's Day. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So welcome to the National Pulse. We've been going on for the last 2 hours to the final hour of this show on a significant day, Women's Day. And I want to just touch on Women's Day for a moment, okay? So, Lillian Ngoyi, Sophie de Bruyn, Rahima Musa, Helen Joseph, and Albertina Sisulu. Those are the 5 women that headed up that march that took place in 1956 on this day. Their march, their protest was effectively against pass laws, right? Wanting to get rid of it. But women were at the very forefront of that and hugely significant. So since then, since democracy, we mark their struggle. So it's less a case of Happy Women's Day, but like bravo to what they did, and then to then reflect on the state of women in South Africa now. But here's the question that I want to ask you. those 5 women that I referred to were at the very forefront. But of course, they led thousands of others to that historic march in Pretoria at the Union Buildings. The question is, South Africa 2024. Who has now carried the baton? Who's taken on the responsibility of those 5 women and the thousands of others that they represent in that historic march? Who carries the baton now for the biggest issues of women, of human rights, of social justice in South Africa 2024 and beyond? Well, I want you to tell me, because I want some names, okay? Who carries the baton? That's my point. What's yours?
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
How about you telling me who are the names that we can think about? Somebody, in fact, messaged me to say it's got to be Naledi Pandor as one of the people, because I'm saying we had 5 at the forefront. Who are the 5 now that carries the baton? If we rightfully so honor the 5 who championed the greatest of causes under the most trying of circumstances, then what's the 2024 equivalent of that, right? Okay, let's move on to other issues. We should be chatting. In fact, what we're going to do, we should be chatting to the representative from the All African Alliance movement that relates to the MK party recently announcing changes to their parliamentary list with 18 MPs being removed by the party yesterday. You know that. I can tell you now that we're struggling to get connected with them, right? But I can tell you now that all 18 MPs that were removed by the MK belong to the All African Alliance movement, and that movement is a powerful church-based organization which threw its weight behind the MK party. So it's interesting in terms of what that means, right? And that movement boasts more than 14 million members and was previously headed by the former Chief Justice Mogoeng. Now, I'm just saying that so you know that. We should hopefully be chatting to them in terms of their thoughts, but maybe you can just give me your point about that anyway, right? And also some of the other issues that have been raised. Here's another one. Ashraf, someone highlighted the unfairness of media silence on the effect of the alleged ID fraud by Chidima's mother on the South African women being deprived of her identity or that. I don't think there's been a silence. I mean, we've discussed it yesterday. We've had specialists, and I'm not the only person. There were many other shows that certainly spoke about the fact that other lives have been destroyed. In fact, that's the words I used when I chatted to Tebe Kalafeng directly, but not just me. Broad South African media has definitely touched on the fact there are multiple victims in this issue. Just think about it. Listen and read and hear about it.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Okay, I want you, by the way, do you have any thoughts and comments on the other issue I just raised about the impact, again, of the whole Miss South Africa issue on the nation brand story and the impact on South Africa as a country? Because I would like to think that, you know, whatever happens with one person does have an impact on somebody else as well. Now, early on, we chatted about the fact that the president spoke about Women's Day, and in that annual Women's Day address, he raised a whole lot of different issues. I won't go through all of it in total, but you do know that President Ramaphosa spoke about the fact that he wants 40% of government's procurement to go to women-owned businesses in particular, right? So that's the one thing. Now, there's another issue around the broader issue of women empowerment, and that is the issue of procurement with regards to people living with disabilities. So what does that mean, and what's the stance of government regarding that, and what should we be doing about just that, right? So women with disabilities, the issues of not just procurement, but certainly the access to public transport in terms of their day-to-day lives. Where is South Africa with regards to that? So a disability activist is Magic in Kwasu. Appreciate your time, Magic. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and also to the listeners, and Womanda to all women on this wonderful day.
Well, thank you so much. Right now, here's the thing. I mean, it is accurate to say, or maybe I'm not accurate. I need to rephrase it. If you had to give us an assessment of women with or people, women with disabilities, and their access to public spaces. They can go where they want, but just how easy it is for them to navigate. I mean, what do you think?
Ashraf, it's still a huge challenge for people with disabilities generally, and more to women with disabilities. Accessibility is a serious issue. Basically, I can say we have achieved a lot when it comes to legislation, from our constitution to relevant legislations in place when it comes to employment and so on. But when it comes to implementation, there's nothing happening that can really satisfy people with disabilities in these 30 years of democracy.
So, I mean, what's your assessment? If you do a general take around the country, I mean, what sort of spaces, and I'm talking about literal public spaces, are open to women or women and people with disabilities? And what about the others that are not? That means we claim the high ground, but in reality, they're not open. They're just so difficult, which actually means people with disabilities, women with disabilities, just stay away from those places.
Indeed, especially public spaces such as government departments, or the kind of spaces that they rent, which most of the time they claim not to be owning. They are not accessible. You find that there are still stairs. You find that there are lifts that are not working. They are not functioning properly to accommodate people with disabilities. But generally, the workplace is not accessible. There's no reasonable accommodation to enable people with disabilities to operate. The challenge of a person with a disability starts from the time he or she wakes up from home, and as they commute to work or to school or to public amenities such as hospitals, clinics, they are not catered for as they should. And if you can imagine, Ashraf, for any ordinary person, it's a challenge. And when it comes to a person with a disability, it becomes double or sometimes even triple the challenge. The public transport system, it's not accessible. You talk about the land transport. I mean, the trains are not moving now, but they are also not accessible. The buses are not accessible. I mean, some years back, we blockaded the streets, I think it was around 1996, so that metro buses can be accessible. BRT, it can only take limited people. And if you look at Patco Bus, which has been available for a long time, it just doesn't cater for the needs of people with disabilities.
So why don't they? I mean, I would have thought so. Are there any public transport spaces that besides like airlines that are on a daily basis in terms of buses, as you said, or trains that welcome people? And if they don't, then how do they manage?
You see, Ashraf, we said with the Additional Department of Transport, there was a short-term accessible transport strategy which they were trying to come up with, which was trying to look at connecting all these modes of transport in such a way that it can be accessible for all types of people with disabilities. But that strategy some years back, it just disappeared somewhere along the line. Whether that was a true willingness of government to come up with something, we don't know. Just lately, as late as November last year, the South African Human Rights Commission conducted some research in Gauteng. They were working with a group, which is Transport Users Group for Persons with Disabilities, to try and ascertain what are the issues. They called all the role players, all the stakeholders. You talk about the taxi organization, you talk about the different municipalities, as well as the National Department of Transport, and I remember even the Gauteng Department of Transport. There's just no willingness from government. They don't invest in ensuring that these modes of transport are accessible for the needs of people with disabilities.
So lastly, what would you want to do now as a matter of urgency?
We have taken action, Ashraf. around all these things that are affecting people with disabilities. We have written to the president, the current president Ramaphosa, and even his predecessor. They are not willing to budge. We have written to the South African Human Rights Commission. We have lodged a complaint. They seem to be not doing enough as well. We are going to take the matter to Parliament. It might even need to go to the Equality Court and even to the UN, because South Africa is a signatory on the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, as well as its optional protocol. We just call upon people with disabilities to actually come along, because the organizations that are claiming to be representing them are not doing enough. We've got a 40-member presidential working group on people with disabilities. They they're not even advising the president to do the right thing.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, talking about the UN, some may ask rather critically, if you want to take it to the UN, what took you so long? Just think about that. That's another whole conversation. Magic. Ngwashu, thanks for your time. There you are. Disability activists raising some really, really important issues around disability. So again, like the general issue about women empowerment, there's the wish list that says this is what we want, an ideal, gives you the spaces. The practical says effectively, don't come and visit us. We don't have the space for you. So what happens then? You are completely shut off. And I can think about many, many other examples around that. Right. Your thoughts? What do you want to get off your chest? You tell me. And don't forget that point that I asked you earlier on. The 5 people that I mentioned that led the Women's March of 1956. What's the 2024 equivalent right now? Who would you put it as to replace those 5 that the baton has been passed on to?
SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024, celebrates Team SA medalists.
The Olympic medalist, Tatiana Smith, representing South Africa.
Tears of joy will certainly flow for Tatiana Smith.
Smith, silver.
I think this one is much different than any of my races. I'm so fortunate to get a medal.
For the love of the game.
Here he comes. Hello, guys. You're so dramatic. Hey, bro, it's not me. It's the extra styling kit. The leather seats with the red finish. It's the tow bar, all coming standard with my red Isuzu badge. Wow, now that is extra.
Why be standard when you can get the all-new Isuzu D-Max X Rider from just 8,742 Rand. Prime less 3.5%, 0% deposit, 40% balloon, and 72 months to pay. Get yours today. Finance is subject to approval. Isuzu Finance, a product of Westbank, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized financial services and registered credit provider.
Witness the global battle of great athletes from South Africa and from all over the world in the Olympic Games Paris 2024. From the heart-pounding races on the track to the graceful routines on the gymnastics floor, each event promises to deliver moments of sheer brilliance and sporting excellence. Live the intense rivalries, inspiring comebacks, and record-breaking performances right here across all SABC TV channels, SABC radio stations, on the move with SABC Plus, or online on sabcsport.com. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes. The Olympic Games Paris 2024. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, it's Women's Day. Bring on those numbers, the 5 people that you would pass the baton from the 1956 champions to the South African 2024 version, right? Who are they? Let me know, in fact. Now, this Women's Day, the Ikusasa Student Financial Aid Programs Foundation, that is, well, they celebrate this remarkable achievement of female students in the key fields of medicine and science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, as well as many other occupations in high demand. Since its inception in 2017, the Ikusasa Student Financial Aid Program Foundation has dedicated itself to bridging this financial gap for students whose family incomes are too high to qualify for NSFAS, too low to allow to afford tertiary education. It's something we've certainly spoken about often, right? So let's get the thoughts of Sifanele Biela, who's a chartered accountant and corporate partnership and operations manager at the Ikusasa Student Financial Aid Program. Sifanele, I appreciate your time. You're live at the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So this is interesting about bridging that gap, which I know came to the fore, particularly around that fees must fall era. So Tell me how you have bridged the gap.
So we've established a comprehensive support program that not only finds the financial aspect of the student's education, but we also make available wraparound support. So we support our students psychosocially, also medically where necessary, to sort of reduce the amount of time that it would normally take them to complete their studies. So we have tried to ensure that our students graduate at minimum required time. We have development and skills program that ensure that when they enter the professional and corporate world, they have the basic skills that are necessary for entry that make it easy for them to thrive in the career choices that they make post graduation. So it's the little things really, in addition to providing funding, that help us move closer to closing the gap.
And do I take it's pretty obvious if you were not there and they fell out of the normal NSFAS funding and they didn't have the money to fund it themselves, they would fall out of the system as well, isn't it?
Definitely. So you are left without a choice, because we currently look at the gross requirements, but we don't look at the context of the need for these students. And without the support, they do certainly fall out of the radar.
Tell me about some of the success stories you've had, because many of them are in this very important STEM field, or all the sciences, right? So that is even doubly important.
Yeah. I think what we've noted is with the students that we have, because of the support that we provide for them so comprehensively, they're able to also tap into other talents that they may have. So we've had students graduate where they also have a passion for photography. We have students that are academics more than they have corporate aspirations. So I think it has given them that flexibility to be confident in the professions that they acquire, to a point that they are comfortable to enter different spaces that they find themselves interested in. We had a doctor last year who graduated last year who did a cycle to KZN from Stellenbosch, for example. So it's those that we've seen, besides the large numbers of graduates and our students being able to find employment and thrive in their careers, but also that flexibility for them to be that confident to enter areas that are of interest to them, while also giving back. Because a huge component of ISFAP is when you are done, we give you the option to then give back to ISFAP. And it's been very heartwarming, because our students would then, unprovoked, start donating towards ISFAP the moment they start working. So I would say it's a good, clear indicator that we are doing something right.
So who then funds your foundation?
So we have a mixture of private and public entities that donate to ISFAP for us to be able to offer bursaries. So at the moment, it's 60% private funding and 40% comes from our public sector.
And I suppose you want more and you want to do more, right? What will be part of your vision?
Definitely. We are tapping into the gap, but in no way have we come close to essentially closing this gap. So we encourage donors, we encourage entities that have funds available, that have skills development funds, socioeconomic development funds, CSI funds, to then approach us and allow us that opportunity to present to them our service offering, because it then enables us to support more students than we currently do. Because at the moment, for 2025 applications, we are sitting on 24,000 undergrad applications and I think almost 4,000 postgraduate applications. And it is nowhere near the amount of money we can afford.
So how many students get funded every year if you're talking about 25,000 applications?
So every year we've been inching close to 1,000 yearly, and this excludes progressing students.
Okay.
So this year we've had an intake of close to 1,000, excluding students that are progressing from last year. So it certainly presents bigger room for improvement and for increased numbers.
I'm
Yeah.
just glad that you guys do what you do. I'm just thinking, can you imagine if you were not there, what impact that would have adversely on our country, right? But maybe the last thing, what happens then to the 24,000? If you can fund 1,000, what happens to the 24,000?
So what we do is we keep a cumulative list of all the students that apply to IFSAP, and we then are able to filter those who complete their applications and qualify, because we go through a rigorous means testing process that allows us to filter students that still do not qualify, even that are more than the missing middle requirement at the moment, which is capped at 600,000 per annum. So those students will automatically be filtered out. However, we do keep data of all the students that apply. And if there are funders out there that don't have restrictions when it comes to funding, or they come across money in the middle of the year compared to the beginning of the year, we're able to go in and tap into the numbers that we couldn't offer at the beginning of the year. So we keep that data. We make it available for other service providers who want or need a group of students to fund.
Well, I'll tell you what, we certainly like to people have a winning formula, and you seem to have just that. So thank you for your time, Sifanele Biela, the Chartered Accountant, but also Corporate Partnership and Operations Manager at the ICUSASA Student Financial Aid Program. Feel free, by the way, to tweet me as well as SFM Radio, and do the same thing on Facebook too. So we certainly would like to share some of the information that you have, including, website and anything else that's relevant to what you do. I think that is a tremendous course that we cannot underestimate the impact that it has, right? Okay, thank you for your time. There's a few people calling. There's a few people connecting about the names that I've put forward. And let me just remind you, they don't have to be politicians. They can be anybody. Because effectively, at that time in 1956, those people were not in formal politics as you would think about it now. So name me 5 people who would effectively for you now carry the baton to be able to pick up the big human rights issues that the women of 1956 did on that day, 9th of August, 1956. Let's get the, in fact, there's no news headlines now. You see, this is what happens on a public holiday, okay? But while there's no news headlines, it does mean somebody sort of rushes in, gets into a hot seat, basically a case of on your mark, get set, go, because I think Tommy's now ready to talk sport. Hi, Tommy.
This is SAFM Sports with Domin Kapele.
I trust you've caught your breath.
I have
Like
caught
the
my
athletes,
breath.
yeah.
Let's start things off with cricket. Well, South Africa added just 13 runs from their final 2 wickets as they advanced from their overnight 344 for 8 to 357 all out in 20 minutes on the third morning of the first test against the West Indies. And currently the West Indies are sitting on 46 for no loss after 19 overs. Meanwhile, South Africa qualified for the 4x400 men's final after Nigeria were disqualified for a lane violation. Nigeria had finished Heat 2 with the season's best of 2 minutes 59.81 seconds, while South Africa were last. However, unfortunately, the judges saw that the Nigerians runners crossed lanes, and that led to tripping a South African runner. And talking about athletics, don't forget tonight is the 4x100 meter relay final today, and obviously Team South Africa is there. We hope that they do well around 8:45. And also, Botswana President Dr. Masisi has given Botswana the afternoon off in celebration of Olympic gold medalist Tebogo Letsile. Now, the 21-year-old defied the odds by becoming the first Botswanan and African to win the men's 200-meter title. And despite this monumental achievement, Letsile says that it's just another medal.
Yeah, I get always the question how I adapt to South African style. I go my way.
It's not a big deal to me because we all know what Mwalazi is capable of. So I wouldn't say it's a dream come true for me. To me, it means a lot to African continent. It means a lot to everybody who was rallying behind me. And for the team that was behind me when we heard about my mom's passing, I was grateful for them because personally, I thought my career was over. But the team, they made sure I take each and every day how it comes and make sure that we come here only with a healthier body and a healthier mind.
Well, apologies for the wrong clip earlier over there. But moving on to football, despite all the talk leading to this weekend's opening game of the season for Sekhukhune, the newly appointed head coach Peter Habala remains in charge of the team. But he will not sit on the bench this weekend as he's still awaiting his work permit. It's been widely reported that Habala is on his way out even before he even coaches his first game in the MTN 8 against Cape Town City at the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane. However, SABC Sport understands that there are some internal and personal issues around Habala and the players, but he sounds happy with his new environment.
Yeah, I get always the question how I adapt to South African style. You know, I go my way. So I'm not really adapting because the players are here. The players play football with left and right foot. It's the same like in Germany or in Europe. Some points are a little bit different, but I like to work with the staff. The staff helped me a lot, and I really like my players. I must really say this. The first 5 weeks, they did everything. We train a lot. The most times we train twice a day. We was really 4 or 5 hours on the pitch. We did video training. We did everyday video sessions. And how I adapt to South Africa, maybe more sun cream for my skin.
Meanwhile, Barcelona have announced the signing of Dani Olmo from RB Leipzig on a 6-year deal for a reported 60 million euros. Olmo finished as a joint top scorer at Euro 2024 with 3 goals as he helped La Roja win the competition for a record 4th time. Now, the 26-year-old played for Barcelona at youth level before joining Dynamo Zagreb in 2014. Meanwhile, Boxing South Africa have joined hands with G Sport on a year-long partnership to increase the visibility of women in boxing. The partnership aims to attract greater interest in the sport, and they will do it through masterclasses, mentorship programs, and content creation, amongst others. Then finally, don't forget that the Springboks are in action tomorrow, and they are playing against Australia, and it's going to be around 6:30. And from Siya Kolisi, Springbok captain, he says they have to make sure that they win tomorrow. They don't have a choice. With that said, it is a wrap from my side.
So that's 6:30 a.m. We must get that right.
6:30 a.m.
So
yes,
if I want to play
6:30
paddle
a.m.
tomorrow morning, I must not play at 7 o'clock.
6:30
I'll
a.m.
miss this game.
But first, before that, relay today.
So just tell me about the relay. So what time?
Around 8:45.
Right, and that's the 200. No,
that is the
4 by
100 meter.
Okay,
yeah.
I know we got through to the finals, so that's great. In terms of the numbers, do you have any idea where we expected to finish? It's difficult to say, but what do you think?
It's difficult to say. I mean, we saw how they qualified in terms of the speed. We're not really fast getting off the mark, starting. Yeah. However, obviously, we have Akani to end off. But in the finals, obviously, it's the best of the best. And we're really hoping that some sort of medal comes out of there. I really do hope. I mean, obviously, Richardson is out, and they have a youngster in there. So we're hoping that we actually do well today.
Yeah. I saw that there's light here, and he's very cool about it. But, I mean, here's the thing. In relay, obviously you want to have the fastest team.
Of course.
But it's ultimately the team that best passes the baton with minimal disruption.
Yeah.
That actually can win an Olympic medal, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Right.
Well, just a correction. I did say 8:45. It's actually 8:45.
I need to get home soon. That's the case.
8:45 this evening.
Got that. Thank you for the reminder. Right. Well, there you are. Passing of the baton. Thanks for your time, and we'll chat tomorrow. Yeah.
We'll chat on Monday.
Oh, tomorrow's, you see, these days are a complete mess. I was at a golf course yesterday, so the mind was on a holiday, and I'm thinking like tomorrow's Monday, maybe. No. Monday is a long, long time away. We'll certainly do that. Right, but we have other big issues to talk about, including your calls.
Well, ke nna tumeng kgapele modimo ke yo.
SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024, celebrates Team SA medalists.
The Olympic medalist, Tatiana Smith, representing South Africa.
Tears of joy will certainly flow for Tatiana Smith.
Smith, silver.
I think this one is much different than any of my races. I'm so fortunate to get a medal.
For the love of the game.
Everyone is just as important as you are. Stop gender-based violence. Treat others the way you want to be treated. No one deserves any form of violence. Report gender-based violence. Contact Lifeline South Africa toll-free number on your mobile phone. Call or WhatsApp 0800 150 150. That's 0800 150 150. Lifeline South Africa. Mental and emotional health for all. This is an SABC supported initiative.
SAFM is celebrating its 88th birthday, and what better way to celebrate than with you, our loyal listener. We will be giving away 8,800 to 10 lucky listeners during the month of August. To stand a chance of winning, stay tuned to SAFM and SMS the keyword SAFM88 followed by your name to 41391 and listen to the station throughout the day where you could be selected as a winner. SMSs are charged at R1.50 per SMS. Free SMSs and SMS bundles do not apply. X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Well, there's a leadership change in Bangladesh with Sheikh Hasina, effectively being toppled and now, I think, in exile in India, right? And Muhammad Yunus is a Nobel Prize winner who's done fantastic work for the Grameen Bank in terms of uplifting communities, in terms of access to funding. Well, he's been put in as the interim leader of Bangladesh. It's very interim until they get themselves sorted out. I don't think he's a politician, but he's certainly very political in saying this much. He said, and I quote him, he says, "I was hurt when India called protests internal affair of Bangladesh. We cannot forgive India for this." He then said, "If there's a fire in the brother's house, how can I say it's an internal affair? India didn't support us. We want to feel like a family, enjoy each other's company like the European Union. We are a real family. So when India says it's internal affairs, it hurts me." I wonder what you make of that, right? And here's another one from Ralinse, right, saying, "You know what, Ashraf, with regard to the Olympic Games, hypocrisy of the West is there for all to see." And then has a flag of Israel. Is Israel being subjected to the same standards as Russia? No, the rules order is a sham. And just staying with that, I did ask you to post pictures of wherever you may be, and it's great that you're there. We got so Pumzile saying this thing from Peter Maritzburg, Mate Bani saying congratulations to Tobacco, made us proud. He's the best superhero, is what I hear. And I'll pick out some other pictures that we've had. I think I've got one from Morwesi. It's got a very fancy picture with the exit sign on top. It's a really cute one there. Thank you for posting that, and you can do that anytime you like, okay? Let's get to some of the calls now on the issue of Miss South Africa. Macho in Cape Town. Hello.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you?
I'm very good indeed. I'm glad you called in. Go ahead. What's your point?
Yes, great. My point is, I think you touched on it a little bit earlier. You said you've been talking about the actual victim, the lady whose identity has been stolen. You said you guys have touched on it before, but I think the media is not doing enough, and hence maybe the anger from South Africans, because I feel like we talk more about Chidima, her name, Chidima, and all about, yes, but, she was born in South Africa, blah, 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 blah. But we're forgetting the actual impact of the lady whose identity has been stolen, her children who might be sitting somewhere without identities themselves. What about her? We should be educating the public about both sides of the coin. The impact of...
Yeah.
Yes.
So I hear you. So I'm saying, I know we touched on it when I say we on this show yesterday, but many other shows may have touched on it throughout the day yesterday. I don't know. I was not listening all the time, okay? And of course on other channels, I'm saying that. I hear what you're saying. I think what happens is, there's a news cycle in this issue. The focus up to now has been primarily on the mother and the Miss South Africa contestant up to now. It is only late yesterday, sometime, that the the story turned, okay, to say, hold it, there's a legal issue regarding the mother or the day before. And then subsequently, the Miss South Africa contestant then decided, well, I'm stepping down, okay. So all that happened in the 2 days, right? Now, what we don't know is this person that you refer to, the missing, the person's identity has been stolen. What happens often you get talk shows like this, but you also get investigative journalists who then cover those beats. And remember, in terms of the Protection of Information Act, they're not obliged to tell us anything. And the Department of Home Affairs said so before. They can't tell us anything, right? Unless they themselves volunteer the situation. So I don't know who it is, but assuming somebody comes up now and says, actually, I mean, there's nothing stopping that person calling in and say, it's me. But if they don't do that, right, it will then require some other investigative sources who they may come up. So I'm saying to you in advance, I expect, in terms of what you're saying, that there are multiple sides to the story, and I expect that those multiple sides and layers will be uncovered or unlayered in the next few days. I think with regard to the weekend papers, by their very nature, they are very investigative. It is their unique selling point. I expect a lot more to come out of it over the weekend. And then once that happens, there's a news agenda that follows, including the Department of Home Affairs, in terms of what happens to that family now. Can they claim damages? Who do they claim it from? I mean, there are so many aspects. But as you can understand, none of it can happen like in 10 minutes. It takes the time. So that's what I'm saying.
Yes. I understand that we don't know the identity of the person, but we can still talk about the impact on whoever that anonymous person might be out there, her children, her whole generation, you know, all the damages that has been suffered by them. At least you can educate the people in the meantime about the suffering of this anonymous person, so that the people who are trying to steal other people's identities one day, they understand the impact and the misery they're bringing onto another family. Because right now, yes, we have to feel sorry for Adechina and her family for being bullied by South Africans. But that's out of anger that the South Africans are not being heard. Hence, this whole thing is taken out of context like this.
All right,
you know,
let's
minimize by. Yes.
Yeah, you got that. Any last point you wish to make? I want to move on. Yeah.
No. My point was just that we shouldn't just talk about one side of the coin and being programmed to feel sorry for her alone.
All right. I'm glad you brought it up. I think it's important. And maybe that last point that you made to say, you know, those who are considering ID theft, of course it's illegal, but those who are even considering it, right, just be aware how you damage the lives of other people. So there's no question. I know we spoke about it yesterday. There are lives that have been ripped apart. And I think to just leave as a final thought to you, the media, not just this channel or this station, but many others have spoken about this missing family. I think the nature of the media, there's a bigger interest when we can put names and faces to the story. So at the moment, we actually don't actually have the story. And once we have the story, and then you're going to find out one day to say, this is what's happened to this woman, and this is where she is, and this is where she lives, and this is what she couldn't do. I think then we'll have a greater appreciation, because it actually is a story that is more interesting, if I can call it that. It's not about right and wrong. I know they're right and wrong. But then it becomes more newsworthy because we actually move away from something academic into an actual story. But thanks for raising it. I think it's an important issue. Makhoka, I really appreciate you calling in. Okay, let's get another thought on this issue with, a different issue on the pay gap comments. Atuka on the line. Hi.
Good evening, Ashraf.
Good evening. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, listen, Ashraf, you know, I was listening to the president of the country pandering to women about gender pay gap issues. When we can solve gender pay gap like this, like in an instant. So each and every single company in South Africa gets visited by an inspector from the Department of Labor to audit that company in terms of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, in terms of equal pay for employees. Now, I was in a specific company where I was losing a battle of gender pay gap. Fortunately for me, an inspector from the Department of Labor came. He reviewed the pay disparity between a man and a woman doing the same job. He imposed penalties on the company. Do you know what the company did? They paid the woman her just due. We've got people in the Department of Labor. We've got people in Parliament. They can gazette it into law. as an HR person, I know that certain companies will take advantage of loopholes. But if we gazette it into law, there are no loopholes that can be taken advantage of by companies.
Well, I would have thought that there would have been signatories to those type of things. One is what is the law, but the other thing is what is the norm in terms of all these big business leaders. Perhaps maybe a conversation with business leadership South Africa, maybe after the weekend, we need to be having, besides the government, okay, in terms of what they think. Thank you for that call, Atuka. Much appreciate that, right? Let's get to, I've asked you to name the 5 people who should carry the baton now, the baton, depends how you take it. So here's one saying, Ashraf, my top 5, Navula Mokonyane, Helen Zille, Naledi Pandor, Poppy Ramatuba, and then Patricia de Lille. But I hear you. The reality is they're all politicians. I mean, they don't have to be politicians. And I see now you've given the extended version that's in Tabiseng saying Precious Motsepe, it was a birthday the other day, by the way, Helen Zille, and then again Poppy Ramatuba, and then Connie Ferguson and Patricia de Lille. So there you are. Anybody else for you think should be in that top 5 that carries the baton of leading and championing women's human rights issues in this country across the board? I'd like to know. So here's some further comments.
Ashraf, a name I would definitely put forward would be that of Thuli Madamsela. I think she's courageous, principled, and didn't ever let anyone put her down. Thank you. Claire from Near George.
Okay, got that. Thank you for that. Well, many would agree, in fact. Thuli Madamsela. Here's another.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I think I want to raise the point that there's also someone who has been hard downplayed in the Miss South Africa competition. There's a certain lady who could have taken her place, the place of the lady who's now withdrawn. And I think we need to also raise that not only has she disenfranchised any other young lady who could have taken the place at any other place, in any other sphere, but also there's a lady who was supposed to have also gone to the national competition who didn't make it because the opportunity was given to her. So I just thought to raise that as well.
Well, I'm glad you've raised it. I think it's a very sober comment. Let me say this much. Accepting, I think, we don't know enough about Chidima Adesina herself in terms of her role in all of this. We don't. So we can't assume that she deliberately kept somebody out. She clearly didn't. Well, my understanding. I understand, by the way, I stand to be corrected, that some lady posted on Twitter today to say, hold it, I'm going to be in the top 10, but what circumstances they are, okay? So that could well be the case that somebody has replaced her at the last minute. But I get your point.
Yeah, Ashraf, in regard to
the Miss South Africa 2024 finale will be live on Saturday, the 10th of August at 6 p.m. from the Sunbet Arena, Times Square, Menlyn, Maine. Good evening, Mzansi! Get your tickets for this crowning moment by going to misssa.co.za, downloading the official Miss SA app, or purchasing your tickets on ticketpro.co.za. Come and witness it live.
South Africa's Golden Girl just knew how to silence all her critics with gold. Caster Semenya won gold in the women's 800 meter and made all South Africans proud, setting a new national record.
Semenya looks over her shoulder and she's away. The winning time is going to be terrific. She comes through 1:55.46. Well, that smashes the world list.
Rio was electrical. The 25-year-old brought Team SA the second gold medal and became the first black South African woman to do so. The weeks after, the Games continued to reveal more criticism, including Britain's Lindsay Sharp, who felt Caster had an unfair advantage. South African excellence got the world talking. She undoubtedly left a remarkable footprint. Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
So here's a story. 2 sisters inspired by local waste pickers are playing their part in keeping the environment clean, one brick at a time. In fact, we spoke about this related issue around Bulawayo. Remember, this is in South Africa, from collecting waste from people's houses to their homes, prototyping. Now, the duo, Kediboni Tsilwane as well as Kekeletso Tsilwane, now manufacture strong and durable bricks from recycled materials, including plastic. You see, it's possible. The bricks are now made from 90% recycled material. So let's get the thoughts of one of the two. That's Kediboni Tsilwane from Ramtsilo Trading. Well, good chatting to you. Welcome to the National Pulse.
Good evening. Is it evening already? Hi, how are you?
Thank you. Morning, evening, it doesn't matter. I think your story is bigger than all of that, right? So we're quite fascinated by what you do. What inspired the two of you in the first place?
Jeez, man. Look, firstly, thank you so much for having us. So our business is, as you properly introduced it, in the waste solution space, and we make bricks out of the waste that we collect. What actually inspired us, I would say, between me and my sister, who's the co-founder of the business, we're very big on sustainability, environmental sustainability, but also we grew up in the construction space, so we were exposed through our parents to the construction aspect of business, and we started manufacturing the conventional bricks that we use in our construction business. And in 2015 is when we, through interaction with our waste collectors, we're originally from the Free State, so through interaction with the waste collectors, often elderly people, and elderly women, if I can be that specific, who collect plastic, and we got to understand how the collection of plastic allows them, one, to be in the recycling space to make a difference, but also, to create a livelihood. So we actually started prototyping the use of these plastics in our bricks in 2016 up until late 2017 to early 2018.
And what impact has it made? I mean, you're speaking about it as a business, but it's also made an environmental impact, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, look, from a business perspective, we really do see, the market uptake of the product from a structural perspective. It's stronger, it's fire resistant, it has more insulation and thermal properties. But also from an environmental perspective, the key benefit of the brick, like you said in the introduction, has 90% recycled material. So the plastic is one of the many other materials that we recycle in the making of the brick. However, with the plastic itself alone, we're able to recycle previously unrecyclable plastic. So, the problematic plastics like the straws, the bread wrappers, all these plastics that traditional recycling technology cannot recycle. We're able to use that as an input into the making of the bricks. We recycle foundry waste, we recycle boiler waste. So it really has, a multifaceted impact when you look at the product on its own.
And what reaction did you get when you started, let's say, I would take it in your own community, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I remember in 2018, we took the product into market and we thought, we've made this big discovery. And one of the key things the reactions that we got, especially from people who are in the concrete construction, property development space, or was around, questions like, what would happen if my house, there's a fire in my house now? So, those type of questions. And we got a lot of skepticism, understandably so. We got a lot of skepticism, a lot of misunderstanding of what the product is. And it took a lot of product development, product testing, certification, because ultimately it can be great from an environmental perspective, but we had to make sure that we've got a product that structurally is sound and fit for purpose.
Absolutely.
So we had to go through all of those testing, accreditation, certification, be it SABAs, Agreement South Africa, all these different institutions, so that when also from our perspective, when we are selling to the end user, we are confident that we're selling a product that is going to stand. It's not just, like earlier, a product that is environmentally friendly, but also make sure that people are safe.
Well, you clearly have the winning formula, isn't it?
Look, it took time for us to develop it, and I'm proud that it's something that we developed at home. It's the typical story that you'll hear, that it's developed at home in the garage type of thing, because we literally had plastics that we're collecting from our neighbors and developing this formula, experimenting rather with this formula that we finally ended up developing and even patenting because it's something that we created for ourselves from scratch.
So, lastly, what sort of reaction and recognition have you received, from the industry, and I'm talking of the building industry, then the environmental industry in terms of, understanding the impact that environment has on the environment in terms of bad environment, good environment, and then thirdly, from government?
Look, from a recognition from an environmental perspective, we've received recognition both local and globally. We're invited to the Green Deal discussion last year where we would look at solutions for plastic because, as we all know, plastic is a global problem. We've received from an industry perspective, our product is available in most of the leading retailers, so we've received a lot of good uptake from both individuals and contractors that we speak to. We're still growing our volumes or capacity so that we can start getting to the direct public development space. And then from a government perspective, we've also had good feedback and support as well from the Department of Environment. So there has been all around. I think it's in how we position the product in that, we make sure that we get the right certifications and accreditations so it'll be easy to get into the room and speak to the relevant stakeholders.
Well, we'd like to speak to inspiring people, inspiring great things, and you've clearly done that, you and your sister. So well done to you guys, and we're certainly going to keep an eye and look out on this winning recipe that you guys clearly have, right from Ramtsilo Trading, Kediboni Tselewani. I appreciate you giving off your time. Thank you so much. Right, let's move on to things before we wrap up. We've had this further comments on Miss South Africa. Here's another.
Yeah, Ashraf, in regard to Miss South Africa, yes, South Africa internationally, its brand would be tarnished, but for a good lesson, you see, it wouldn't be South Africa, wouldn't it be the first country to come across such a thing. It's a lesson. South Africa would have learned a very serious and a good lesson so that next time be organized South Africa. So there's nothing new or strange in that things here in Kuma.
Well, Kotel, about being organized, I think sometimes if there's intent to deceive, it's sometimes very, very difficult to find out. But in this case, they were found out finally, right? Here's another.
Hi, Ashraf. My issue is based on the sport. I'm Stephen Cornelius in the Northern Cape, Upington. I think there should be more development from a primary level up until a tertiary level. I think that's where we are lacking because there's not a lot of funding that have been given to schools, and I think that's where the academy should be able to be uplifted. And I personally feel that South Africa has done great. There's a lot of personal best records that has been broken. There's a lot of national records that has been broken. So I'm proud of the team. And yes, obviously there's better players or better athletes as well. So, but I think it's more development that that the government should basically focus on putting our resources into primary, the developmental stages in terms of sports and the sporting code.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think the point of grassroots investment is a given. We know that across the board, that's why rugby does better than others, because their investment in grassroots is just bigger than many of the other sports, and you can see the results of that. Well, that's the show. Thank you for being a part of it, of the National Pulse that is on Women's Day. And think about it, you can also still tweet about the fact 5 women that for you carries the baton of the 1956 generation in 2024. Name the 5 according to you. You can tag us, SAFM Radio, and tag me, Ashraf Garda. You can post it on Facebook too. Use the hashtag The National Pulse. Let's see what you come up with. Let's get the news now and just go on 6 o'clock with Greg House.
Thank you, Ashraf. Enjoy the rest of your evening. In this news update, a call on young women to fight poverty and slain EFF councillors laid to rest. Good evening. The Human Rights Commission is encouraging young women to fight poverty